Part 2. Su Wenping was pressured by his mother to get married, so he went on a blind date with a stunning CEO. Though she was 10 years older, her beauty and figure were captivating. The two quickly fell in love, and when they finally got intimate, Su Wenping noticed a photo in Su Yurou's room. In the photo were two women, Su Yurou and his ex-girlfriend from college. Su Wenping, darling, who is this woman? Su Yurou, she is my daughter, our daughter. Su Wenping. Chapter 31, Su Yurou's predicament. Finally able to take off his mask and hat, Su Wenping felt much more comfortable, though walking around downtown, he still attracted a surprisingly high number of curious glances. It was still early, and with no other plans, Su Wenping didn't dare leave his vehicle just anywhere. After a moment of thought, he mapped out his route and headed toward the Su Group's headquarters. When the roaring of his car's engine stopped, even in the underground parking garage, 7 or 8 people stopped to watch. Keeping a calm demeanor, Su Wenping got out of the car, ignoring the mixed looks of surprise and envy cast his way. He glanced around, searching for the elevator. This office building wasn't exclusively used by the Su Group, and the signage was somewhat confusing. As Su Wenping approached the elevator, unsure of the floor, he waved to a woman nearby. "Excuse me, miss." He just wanted to ask for directions. But as soon as he raised his hand, 3 or 5 women turned their heads, and 2 or 3 men looked at him with wary expressions. They had all seen his car. The women exchanged glances, and the most beautiful one blushed, looking at Su Wenping with excitement. Are you talking to me? Is this what goodwill feels like for the wealthy?" With a slightly helpless smile, Su Wenping replied, "Hello, miss. I just wanted to ask what floor is the Su Group on?" A hint of disappointment flashed in her eyes, but she quickly looked surprised. "Sir, are you visiting Su Beauty Group?" "I work there." "Yes, Su Beauty Group." She smiled warmly. "Then you can ride the elevator with me." "Who are you here to see?" "I'm here to see your CEO," Su Wenping replied with a slight smile. Ding! The elevator arrived, and as they stepped out, she teasingly asked, "Oh, you're here to see our CEO? Just out of curiosity, are you her boyfriend?" "Well, yes." "How did you guess?" After exiting the elevator, they walked down a short corridor. Inside the glass doors was the reception area of Su Beauty Group. As she pushed open the door, the assistant covered her mouth and chuckled. "I'm the CEO's assistant. I was just out getting her coffee. Last night, she left 3 documents unfinished. She rarely leaves anything undone, then took a call and hurried out." "Was it for you?" "Yes." "What a perfect match." They reached the office, and near the reception area, she led him to a seating area, smiling as she said, "Would you like to call her yourself, or should I announce you?" "No need to bother her." Su Wenping smiled. "I just wanted to come up and see Yurou's work environment. If she is busy, don't let her know I'm here. I'll just have some water and wait for her." "All right." She covered her mouth and laughed. "Sir, you're very considerate." Being the CEO's assistant, she had excellent people skills. Before entering her office, she alerted the receptionist, who promptly served Su Wenping tea. Su Wenping, however, wasn't one to sit still. He had just raised the tea to his lips when he heard the sound of something crashing inside, making him tense slightly. He stood up, signaling the receptionist to be quiet, and quietly walked down the corridor toward the office. The business department was busy. From afar, he saw that the CEO's office was empty, and the source of the sound was the research department. Peeking through the door, he saw broken products on the floor and Su Yurou's furious expression. 7 or 8 research staff stood before her with their heads down. How could this product fail the quality inspection? "I personally oversaw the development of this product. We have a launch event next week, and now there is an issue like this? Do you think I'm a fool?" Su Yurou said, her tone sharp. She looked around at the staff, her gaze piercing. "Don't think I don't know." Pointing to the product on the floor, she continued, "The sample sent to quality inspection was tampered with, wasn't it? I've been in this business for 20 years. I've seen every trick in the book. I don't care who put you up to this, you'll pay for trying to pull something like this on me." Her eyes swept over the staff, but the culprit hid well, showing no sign of guilt. Su Yurou couldn't identify the saboteur right away. Having experienced countless business battles, she immediately sensed the smell of conspiracy in the failed inspection. However, aside from knowing there was sabotage, Su Yurou couldn't pinpoint the issue with the product. She was bluffing. After a moment of cold silence, seeing no one speak, a flash of frustration crossed her face. She then said icily, "I'm giving you 1 day. Whoever did this had better come forward, and I might consider your past contributions to the company and show leniency. If I find out who's behind this, it won't be just an internal issue economic crime, fraud you could end up in prison." Xu Wenping watched calmly. The woman who was so gentle with him was, in fact, a capable businesswoman. Anyone who underestimated her would pay the price. Su Yurou didn't manage to intimidate the culprit into confessing. When she came out, Xu Wenping moved out of sight, walking toward the exit without crossing her path. She was too angry to notice anyone around her and went straight back to her office. Once she was inside, Xu Wenping calmly pushed open the door to the research room. "Who are you? Who let you into our research lab?" someone asked. Without replying, Xu Wenping touched the ground, smelling the shattered skincare product. In just a moment, the name of the ingredient flashed in his mind. They called him the divine healer for a reason. Since inheriting this skill, his sensitivity to taste, sight, and smell had reached an extraordinary level. After a quick sniff, he frowned, glanced at the researchers, and briefly stopped on a tall man in glasses. Without a word, he walked out. Returning to the lobby, Xu Wenping settled back into his seat, sipping tea as he waited for Su Yurou to finish work. Just from a single whiff, Xu Wenping had already deduced the culprit. But since this was Su Yurou's company, he decided to ask her about it after work. At that moment, his system emitted a notification sound. Chapter 32, Caught in the Act. Your wife is being bullied, and you're just going to sit back and do nothing? Time to choose, system. 1. Cowardice. Even though you've discovered the truth, you choose to ignore it, letting the situation play out as it will and leaving Su Yurou to handle it on her own. Reward, the latest electric toy from Japan. 2. Business first. Since the situation has escalated, the Su Group's profits take priority. Rather than exposing the mole, you leverage your medical skills to develop a new product to help Su Yurou through the crisis. Reward, cash prize of 1,000 yuan. Treat yourself to a hot pot. 3. Righteous retaliation. Since your wife has been wronged, you should expose the mole, bring him to justice, and help the Su Group overcome this crisis. Reward, a villa in Suihaixianting on the outskirts of Jinhai City, next to a scenic mountain and the ocean worth a fortune. Although the system's rewards are tempting, a villa in Suihaixianting is impossible for Wenping to ignore. Built since the early days of the country and meticulously maintained, this villa sits on Xianjing Mountain, overlooking the sea. Beyond the stunning view, it's rumored that powerful people often reside there. The villas aren't open to the public, and the prices for independent properties are said to start at billions, a staggering figure even in the nation's largest cities. The system sure has some cheek. After some time, Wenping's phone rang. Seeing Su Yurou's name on the caller ID, he promptly made his way toward her office, waving to her from a distance. Su Yurou's eyes lit up as she nodded and walked over. Before she could greet him, Wenping put a finger to his lips, signaling for silence. Though a bit confused, she nodded and let him take her hand. As they got on the elevator, Wenping, feigning frustration, whispered to Su Yurou, "What happened to sharing everything? Aren't we supposed to face challenges together? Now you're keeping secrets." Su Yurou hesitated, then chuckled, holding his arm. "Just a minor issue at work. Nothing serious. Even if I told you, how could you help?" "That remains to be seen," he replied with a smile. The elevator chimed, and Wenping's gaze immediately locked onto a familiar figure from Su Yurou's company. He saw a man rushing to leave the building, looking unusually anxious. Wenping turned to Su Yurou and asked, "Mind if I borrow your car keys?" She was puzzled, but Wenping's instincts were spot on. He suspected this man, the same one he de-identified in the research lab earlier, of foul play. A subtle medicinal scent, undetectable to most, clung to him, which was unmistakable to Wenping. After a short drive, they saw the man parking near a bridge, where another car was waiting. From the other vehicle emerged a woman one Su Yurou recognized instantly. Zhao Xiaohai and Han Fangfang. Zhao Xiaohai, her company's technician, was now meeting with Han Fangfang, a familiar face from an event hosted by the Dehao Group. As Wenping parked nearby, Su Yurou clenched her fists, furious at the sight of them together. She turned to Wenping, shocked. "How did you? Let us go get some answers." Without another word, Wenping stepped on the gas, pulling up directly in front of the pair. Su Yurou stepped out, calling out, Zhao Xiaohai. Our company has treated you well, yet you and Han Fangfang conspired to betray us? Zhao Xiaohai held a box of money and a small vial, ready to exchange it with Han Fangfang. Caught in the act, his face turned pale as he muttered, I'm sorry, President Su, I have a family to support. I had no choice. With a calm but piercing look, Wenping held the car door shut as Zhao tried to flee. Going somewhere? He asked coldly. Han Fangfang scowled when she recognized Wenping. You again? If it wasn't tea for you, I would have closed the Dahao Group deal. Wenping laughed derisively. Since you know it's me, aren't you considering running away? Han Fangfang sneered, opening her back door, from which a towering, muscular man stepped out, a retractable baton in hand. You think I'm scared of you? Last time was a fluke. You're just a recent graduate, don't think you can scare me. She gave him a mocking look as the man advanced, baton snapping open with a metallic click. Just a reminder, Wenping said, calm but firm, this issue is between our companies. If you raise a hand against me, there will be legal consequences for violence. Chapter 33, Push to Desperation. Although Xu Wenping appeared fit because he enjoyed exercise and practiced Tai Chi, which kept him healthier than most, the brute before him was nearly twice his size. A single glance at the calloused hands on the man told Xu Wenping he was up against someone with real fighting experience. Knowing he couldn't beat this man in a direct confrontation, especially since the brute had a weapon, Xu Wenping instinctively moved Su Yurou behind him for protection as Zhao Xiaohai ducked behind Han Fangfang. Breaking the law? Han Fangfang's expression turned savage. This woman has backed me into a corner. I've been waiting for a chance to lure her out. Now you come here on your own. What do I have to fear? Along, break this guy's legs. She ordered. Got it. Along lunged forward like lightning, swinging his baton at Xu Wenping. Although Xu could track its trajectory, his body wasn't quick enough to dodge completely. He regretted not bringing his silver needles from the old dean as the baton struck his shoulder, sending a wave of pain through his body. System, are you going to help or what? He groaned inwardly. Ding. Hostess current condition is concerning. System activating options, please remember the system's benevolence, it chimed. 1. Prioritize survival and run. Reward, speedy feet. 2. Be a coward and shield Su Yurou while taking the hits. Reward, turtle's tough shell. 3. Stand your ground like a man. Become an unstoppable force. Reward, complete Chinese martial arts guide and theory of soft and hard Qigong. Without hesitation, he chose option 3. Just like before, when the system had granted him medical prowess, his mind now flooded with intricate martial arts techniques, punches, kicks, internal arts, and methods to cultivate soft and hard Qi. His physical agility instantly transformed. As a long baton swung toward him again, Su Yurou cried, Stop. Han Fangfang, we can negotiate. You want the contract? I'll give it to you. The formula too. Su Yurou added, defeated. Han Fangfang raised a brow, signaling Along to pause. Really? She sneered, stepping forward. You've been so smart all your life, Su Yurou. For this pretty boy, you're willing to give up everything? He's not a pretty boy. He's my man. Su Yurou retorted, though trembling with anger. Han Fangfang, make your guy lower his weapon, and I'll have the contracts delivered here for you. Yurou. Xu Wenping said calmly, lifting a hand. There's no point in bargaining with trash like this. Even if you agree, the Imperial Group won't allow it. Han Fangfang's face darkened. You brat, you've clearly never taken a beating before. Do you think you can interfere with the Imperial Group's matters? Along, beat him R. Before Han Fangfang could finish, Xu Wenping grabbed her arm in a flash, twisting it behind her back, making her yelp in pain. Along stepped forward, but seeing Xu's tightening grip on Han Fangfang, he stopped and warned, You'd better let her go. I was never taught to hit women, but you forced me. Xu said coldly, releasing Han Fangfang with a kick that sent her sprawling face first onto the ground, blooded and humiliated. With a furious glare, Han Fangfang screamed, Kill him! Kill him! Along, equally enraged, swung his baton toward Xu's head, producing a whooshing sound as it cut through the air. Wenping! Su Yurou cried out, her eyes filling with tears. Yet Xu remained calm, shifting his stance slightly, and narrowly dodged the baton. With a simple yet powerful elbow strike, he sent a long flying 3 meters backward, collapsing heavily on the ground. Along lay convulsing, unable to even cry out, before finally passing out. Xu Wenping briefly marveled at his success. He used the twin pole strike, a move from Bajikan, involving subtle but effective techniques. He hooked a long S ankle and struck his chest with pinpoint accuracy. Is he dead? Xu wondered briefly. The system responded, don't worry, he is not dead. The martial arts skills you selected are complex, but without complete power infusion, they are not lethal yet. Xu felt relieved, though he kept his composure. Looking at the stunned expressions of Han Fangfang and her lackeys, he gave a slight smile. Han Fangfang, did you think Yurou would fall for just any pretty boy? And did you really believe a single musclehead could do anything to me? Now, hand over Su Corporation's formula, and I may let you off without too much suffering. Power is always a major plus in a man. Seeing Xu Wenping standing before her like an unbreakable shield, Su Yurou felt her heart racing as she gazed at him, a sense of security filling her chest. This is my man. Chapter 34 Research and Development. Xu Wenping was so powerful that Han Fangfang was naturally dumbfounded, and panic flashed in her eyes. Hearing Xu Wenping's words, she tightly grasped the reagent in her hand and was trembling as she wanted to pass it over. But at this moment, looking at the blood in her hand, Han Fangfang went crazy again. Her face showed a ferocious look, and she didn't understand why Xu Wenping went to stop her. The reagent in the glass bottle hit the stone hard, and the liquid inside immediately spilled. Han Fangfang glared at Xu Wenping and said, "You two dogs are determined to force me into a desperate situation, so no one will have an easy life. Come on, kill me if you have the guts. You stole my project, blocked my product, and now you're destroying my face. What would happen if you killed me? I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid." Huh. He was originally planning to go up and snatch it, but when he saw Han Fangfang looking like she was throwing a tantrum and losing her temper, Xu Wenping, the newly minted master of traditional Chinese martial arts, couldn't help but gasp and hurriedly pulled Su Yurou back. Then he took out his cell phone, took a few photos of Zhao Xiaohai and the others, and hurriedly stuffed Su Yurou into the car. But, the reagents. Su Yurou was puzzled for a moment, only to see Xu Wenping smile bitterly and say, "Should we reason with that crazy woman? Don't worry, he will come to Su Group in person in a few days and kneel in front of you to beg for forgiveness." Su Yurou looked surprised. At this moment, she no longer had the slightest doubt about Xu Wenping's ability, but she still frowned slightly and whispered, "For safety reasons, there is only one sample, and I even destroyed the ingredient list. It will take at least half a month to retest and extract it. Originally it was to guard against the enemy, but now I have been planning for a long time. The product launch will be next week. Where can I get the new products?" Su Yurou hugged Xu Wenping's arm. Such a strong woman almost cried. Xu Wenping grabbed Su Yurou's hand, thought for a moment, and smiled slightly. "If you believe it, I have a way." "I believe it." Su Yurou didn't ask any solution at all. She just kissed Xu Wenping on the face, wiped the tears from his eyes, and said gently, "As long as you say it, I believe it." No words were spoken that night. Su Yurou was worried, so Xu Wenping naturally didn't bother her anymore. She was already very tired, so after washing up, she lay on the bed and fell asleep instantly. Xu Wenping covered her with the quilt, kissed her gently on the forehead, and left immediately. But after Xu Wenping left, Su Yurou opened her eyes, looked at the bedroom door and smiled gently. After thinking for a moment, she finally fell into a deep sleep. The next morning was still a routine morning. After the two had breakfast, Xu Wenping sent Su Yurou to the company. Su Yurou was also a little surprised to see the Maserati parked in the garage. How did Xu Wenping go to the company yesterday? However, Su Yurou did not ask more about this little thing. She was still worried about how to solve the product problem when she went to the company. "It doesn't matter how much it costs. I am afraid that even if I pay a price, there is no way to make up for this mistake." The two came to the parking lot of Su Group. Su Yurou smiled slightly. After getting out of the car, she was about to say goodbye to Xu Wenping, but she saw Xu Wenping lock the car and followed her. "You?" Seeing Su Yurou's puzzled expression, Xu Wenping smiled mysteriously and said, "Let's go. I'll help you solve the product problem." "Solve the product problem?" Su Yurou raised her eyebrows slightly upon hearing this, but became interested and asked, "How do you solve it? Tell us about it and let's see." Xu Wenping smiled and said, "Keep it a secret. I'll tell you when we get up there." Su Yurou raised her eyebrows, thinking that Xu Wenping was just trying to make her happy, but it was true that she felt a lot more relaxed with Xu Wenping around. After the two went upstairs, Xu Wenping walked into the laboratory confidently. This made Su Yurou even more surprised. After Xu Wenping entered the room, he began to look at the various scientific research instruments. Su Yurou was making beauty products, which was generally refined by adding some new elements, such as drugs, to the fixed beauty formula. Seeing the stranger Xu Wenping tinkering with the equipment, someone immediately stood up and said, "Hey! What on earth are you doing? You came in yesterday and didn't say a word. Who told you to touch the things in the laboratory? Hurry up and get out." "Hello, President Su." Su Yurou saw Xu Wenping tinkering with the equipment, and with her cleverness, she immediately had a surprising guess in her mind. Su Yurou walked in calmly. Seeing several researchers greeting her, she just smiled and said, "This is my husband, his last name is Xu. You don't have to interfere with what he wants to do." If it were other studios, their attitude towards scientific researchers might be better, but the Su group was different. In fact, the people here were generally auxiliary, and the real main researcher was Su Yurou herself. She studied biotechnology in college and has been committed to beauty industry research since her debut. When it comes to research and development, she is top-notch. Therefore, these scientific researchers all have a special recognition of Su Yurou and naturally dare not act rashly. Everyone was surprised for a moment when they heard this. Su Yurou said softly, "By the way, I'd like to inform you of one thing. I've already found out about the undercover. You should have noticed that Zhao Xiaohai didn't come to work today. He and Han Fangfang from Hanzhuang Beauty illegally designed our company and committed economic crimes. I have successfully obtained evidence and will hand it over to the legal department for an appeal. What conclusion will be reached is not our company's business. But I would like to say in advance that those of you who have opinions about the company can propose negotiations. If the negotiations are unsuccessful, you can resign and leave. If there are still people who want to play tricks under my nose, Zhao Xiaohai is your role model." Su Yurou's combination of kindness and severity made everyone feel terrified and nodded quickly. After a gentle smile, Su Yurou came close to Xu Wenping and said, "How is it? Now that you are at the company, can you tell me how you plan to save the product?" Xu Wenping was pinching some powder and sniffing it carefully. Hearing this, he raised his eyebrows confidently and said, "It's just a product. Since one is lost, we can just take out a better one to replace it, isn't that right?" Looking at Xu Wenping's calm expression, Su Yurou was surprised and said, "You said it so easily." Xu Wenping chuckled. "I was a little unsure when I went upstairs, so I didn't tell you explicitly. After looking at your materials and configurations, I am confident that I can develop a new skin care product within 2 days. Leave it to me." Su Yurou was slightly startled, but remained calm. But other scientific researchers also understood the conversation between the two and showed surprised expressions. Chapter 35. How about giving it a try? Developing a brand new product in 2 days. "Mr. Xu, are you kidding me?" The first researcher raised the question, and someone immediately echoed him, laughing sarcastically and saying, "That's right, Mr. Xu. Even an outsider knows that products are the foundation of a company. If a brand new and effective product can be developed in 2 days, then within a few months, the Su Group should be listed." Obviously, because Su Yurou had just mentioned the issue of Xu Wenping's identity, these scientific researchers were somewhat restrained. If it weren't for this identity, I'm afraid these people would have started cursing at me. You developed a brand new product in just 2 fucking days. We scientific researchers should just eat shit. Facing the scientific researcher's question, Su Yurou's eyes also flashed with waves. She pulled Xu Wenping's hand and said gently, "Yes, Wenping. Although you are great in many areas, I am also more authoritative in skin care products." Su Yurou didn't want to undermine Xu Wenping's self-confidence, but obviously, she didn't really believe that Xu Wenping could develop effective skin care products within 2 days. Xu Wenping just stared at Su Yurou gently and said, "Believe me." Although others said so, Xu Wenping was just being modest by saying, "Just 2 days." As the saying goes, all principles lead to one thing, and one can apply what one has learned to other things. In fact, when seeing these devices and the medicinal materials inside, Xu Wenping already understood that their skin care products and cosmetics had the rudiments of integrating Chinese medicine into medicines, but they were still very cautious in their use. Also because they didn't understand much, the proportions and properties of the medicinal materials were also a bit confused. Let alone 2 days, he could research a miracle medicine in 5 minutes by just copying the prescription in his mind. But seeing others say this, Su Yurou was also a little distrustful. Xu Wenping turned around and said gently, "Dear experts, this is actually a coincidence. It's not that I can research a new product in 2 days. Before this, there was a product used by my relative, which he developed himself. He knows some ancient Chinese medicine, and the prescription has never been leaked to anyone. It just so happens that its effect is similar to what our group lost, so I thought of it. No matter what, I still hope that everyone can help me. Even if I can't help Yurou overcome her difficulties, I can't just sit there and wait for death, right?" Hearing this, Su Yurou was slightly stunned. Looking at the light in Xu Wenping's eyes, she was a little skeptical about what her relatives said, but the determination in Xu Wenping's eyes made Su Yurou feel that he could really solve the problems she was facing. How about giving it a try? In fact, Xu Wenping spoke gently and the scientific researchers present were slightly stunned. After all, although they did not use a sharp tone just now, their sarcasm was not concealed at all. In this situation, Xu Wenping could still be so gentle, which made everyone feel a little ashamed. Mr. Xu is right. We can't just sit there and wait for death. Yes. If Mr. Xu can really remember some of his original private parts, and we work together, maybe we can really develop a brand new product. Yes, Mr. Su, why don't we let Mr. Xu participate? In just a few minutes, these scientific researchers changed their attitudes. Su Yurou felt deeply moved. Although Xu Wenping seemed like a big boy in front of her, the personality charm of this big boy should not be underestimated. Good. Su Yurou nodded confidently and said with a smile, "Then I will appoint Mr. Xu as the special consultant of our Su group. The research and development of this product will be completed by you all to help Mr. Xu." Su Yurou bowed deeply and said, "Thank you very much." Many scientific researchers quickly returned the greetings. Su Yurou looked at Xu Wenping gently, and from an angle that no one else could notice, she gently kissed Xu Wenping on the face and said, "Thank you too, husband." Xu Wenping's body trembled, and when he turned around, Su Yurou had already left the studio with a red face. Xu Wenping smiled gently. At this time, the leader of the scientific research work came up with his glasses on, smiled and gave up his workstation, and said, "Mr. Xu, please write down the ingredients you can remember, and our team will observe to see if they are complete. We will do our best to cooperate and help Su Group overcome this difficulty." Xu Wenping smiled slightly and then nodded. After sitting down, he picked up his notebook and wrote the 4 big words, "condensed fragrance Ju," on the top. The director of the scientific research studio was leaning over his notebook and looking at it. But when Xu Wenping wrote out the first ingredient, the director was slightly stunned. Pearl powder. The director scratched his head and then it dawned on him that pearl powder was said to have the effect of whitening the skin, and it seemed that a small amount of it had indeed been added to some famous skin care products. Cypress, rose, licorice. Rosin, peach core, donkey hide gelatin. When the researcher saw a string of plant names that he had only heard of, he immediately became confused. Xu Wenping had added annotations at the back, such as their weight in grams and the method of making the medicine. Cypress fruit is the fruit of cypress. You should peel it and take out the core. It should be harvested in November when it is ripe. Pine nuts should be harvested in late December or early spring. Mr. Xu, I would like to ask, why do these things require time? Will the ingredients inside change as time passes? The scientific researcher asked a strange question. Xu Wenping smiled and responded, "The 4 seasons are opposite. Spring is wood, and the east is green. Summer is fire, and the south is red. Autumn is gold, and the west is white. Winter is water, and the north is black. Generally speaking, holly is the best for things that are good for color, as are pine and cypress, for their longevity. When mixed with black water, the extremes of things will reverse, and the color will naturally become white, smooth and delicate. Although the ingredients have not changed, the effect will definitely be best in the current season." After Xu Wenping wrote down the last frozen mud, he handed the recipe to the researcher and said, "You should immediately ask your subordinates to purchase these things. As long as the things are in place, we can refine them right away." Although Xu Wenping's words shocked the scientific researchers, they still felt a little strange. After all, Xu Wenping's words were too mysterious. What did they mean by the 4 seasons corresponding to each other? He was conflicted, but faced with this completely incomprehensible prescription, he had no choice but to hand it over to the purchasing department. Although the prescription was very strange, it didn't contain any rare items. When the director of the research department handed it over for purchase, he also mixed up the quantities so that it wouldn't be leaked. By noon, these things had basically been gathered together. The scientific research work got people moving and they began to help Xu Wen balance the quantity of medicinal materials. But without waiting for them to move, Xu Wenping just pinched it casually, and it turned out to be exactly the amount he said, not a bit more or less. Chapter 36 Cold Fragrance Dew. How to stir-fry medicinal materials, how to control the fire dog, how to turn the contents into powder, and how fine should the powder be. Everyone in the research studio was soon at a loss, with their hands hanging down. Only then did they realize that they could not help Xu Wenping at all. Xu Wenping turned his head gently and smiled at the director of the research room. Take a notebook and write it down carefully. If you want these herbs to have the appropriate functions, you need to know the frying and heat. For example, when frying the pork in baisha, the temperature of the pan must be around 30 degrees, and the difference cannot exceed 2 degrees. The subsequent temperature increase is divided into 3 levels. Pearl powder is sieved 3 times, and the fine sieving should not be too much or too little. The reason is that pearl powder that has been sieved 3 times is just about the same size as the pores of human skin. If there is too much, it will get stuck, and if there is too little, it will not penetrate. Xu Wenping quickly prepared the prescription. There were several pots of black stuff, which smelled fragrant, but still made many scientific researchers look strange. Who would put this kind of skin care product on their face? But then, their faces turned surprised. When 2 of the products were mixed together and boiled, the black product turned into an amber gold color. When 3 or 4 things are put together, the black paste turns into a light silver white color. When Xu Wenping had everything ready and took out the contents of the pot, the slurry inside was slightly solidified and looked white, smooth and clear, slightly thicker than water and slightly lighter than jade. The exquisite appearance and bright colors really refreshed everyone's 3 views. Gulp. The director of the research lab swallowed hard, looked at Xu Wenping with a hint of doubt, and asked, "We don't seem to have put any glue in it. Will it not stick to the skin if applied?" Rosin is glue. The director of the research lab was surprised and asked, "You actually turned the rosin into glue directly with the step you just took? You can make a lot of money just by selling the glue, right?" Xu Wenping raised his eyebrows slightly, ignoring the inexperienced look of the director of the research lab. The director blushed, then reacted and said, "I'll do the test right away." "No need, just find someone to test it yourself." Directly on the face. Xu Wenping smiled and nodded, saying, "Strictly speaking, this is a skin care product. It will take effect in 15 minutes. The first time you use it, the effect will be perfect. You'd better find someone with poor skin, such as those with spots on the face, acne marks and the like. It doesn't matter if you have acne. This medicine can also treat acne. In fact, this is a medicine mainly used to treat acne. Whitening and beauty care are just additional effects." Everyone looked at each other, and the director of the research lab made the first decision, saying immediately, "I'll go find someone." Not long. A woman with pockmarks all over her face was dragged into the laboratory with the screams of a pig being slaughtered. "Director, are you trying to kill me? I've already apologized for secretly using the test subjects last time. How can you still use me as a guinea pig?" The woman shouted loudly. "What are you yelling about? I'm here to heal you. Just lie down obediently." It seems that this woman's skin is allergic because she used some chemical skin care products last time, but her skin is in good shape. Makeup was applied on her with an aggrieved expression. Time flies. A scream pierced the sky. The director of the research laboratory rushed into Su Yurou's office excitedly, panting. Without saying a word, Su Yurou hurried to the research office. The little white mouse that was just pulled in was now standing in front of the mirror with an excited look on his face. He looked at his fair little face, wiped his eyes several times, wiped the mirror again, ran to the glass next to him and looked. After making sure that it was not fake, he turned around and hugged Su Yurou excitedly. "Boss Su. Wow, my face is healed. Did you see it? My face healed instantly. It seems to be getting a shade whiter. Yes or no?" Su Yurou suppressed her shock and nodded gently. She turned around and looked at everyone in the research studio. Seeing Xu Wenping's confident raised eyebrows, she said with a trembling voice, "Success, success. No. Not so fast." The director of the research lab immediately said in a trembling voice, "It's a success, President Su. You read it right, it is indeed a success, and this is definitely a hit product. It will definitely cause a sensation not only in Jinhai City, but also in the entire industry. Even if the entire skincare industry is given 10 years, they will not be able to develop something so effective." Su Yurou clenched her fists. Tears of emotion flashed in her eyes as she pinched the delicate face of the experimental little white mouse. Although some acne scars could still be seen, compared with the face that no one could bear to look at when it was just pulled in, it was a complete change. Su Yurou bowed deeply to everyone and said, "Thank you. Su Yurou, thank you all for your help to the company. The company will never forget your dedication and hard work." But at this moment, the director of the research laboratory blushed, and quickly reached out to help Su Yurou up, lowering his head and saying, "Boss Su, you are wrong this time. If it was our research, I'm afraid we would have asked you for credit a long time ago. The problem is, this research. He. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but I can't figure out the ingredients list Mr. Xu gave me even if I rack my brains. During the production process, we don't even have the ability to help out. This product was actually completed independently by Mr. Xu. If you want to thank someone, thank Mr. Xu." Su Yurou's expression changed slightly. She raised her head, her expression became much gentler, and she looked at Xu Wenping tenderly. Xu Wenping also had a complacent look on his face and planned to wait for Su Yurou to come over. "So that's how it is." Su Yurou spoke calmly, "That's good, he's done a lot. I don't thank him, he's my husband, he works for my family, do you want me to thank him?" Snort. "Let me see the ingredient list." Su Yurou's sudden change made Xu Wenping stunned. When she turned around, she found that Su Yurou blinked at her. Only then did Xu Wenping come to her senses. After looking at the ingredient list for a long time, Su Yurou naturally couldn't figure out the logic behind it. She just nodded and said, "Obviously, this is an invention. If you don't understand anything, you must call me or Mr. Xu immediately. Again. Take out the test product immediately and send it to the laboratory for testing. If the product cannot be put on the market, no matter how good its efficacy is, it will be useless. Do you understand?" Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Su Yurou smiled and nodded, she put on her high heels and moved lightly. After taking Xu Wenping's hand, she opened the door and walked towards her office. Chapter 37. The Villa has arrived. The two of them came to the president's office hand in hand. Su Yurou hung on Xu Wenping's arm. Perhaps because the appearance of the president's little daughter was out of place, the little assistant's eyes flashed with surprise, but he quickly concealed it and said nothing. There is also a small tea table in Su Yurou's office. After sitting down, she did not mention the problem with the ingredients just now. Instead, she took out her mobile phone, searched it, and then opened the Jinhai City legal news. "Take a look." Xu Wenping looked strange, but when he took it and looked at it, he showed surprise in his eyes. Gimli City News reported, on the evening of May 29, the Commerce Bureau received a real-name report that the Korean cosmetics industry has repeatedly committed illegal and criminal acts such as counterfeiting skin care products, deceiving laboratories, and concealing ingredient lists in its commercial activities in recent years. The suspect Fang has been arrested and will face multiple penalties for fraud, economic fraud, and Dalong drug management law. Before Xu Wenping could say anything, Su Yurou searched for a long time and found a piece of news that had nothing to do with this report, which was released in Jinhai City. Decision on the punishment of the fugitive criminal suspect Zhao Xiaohai. Zhao Xiaohai is a native of Jinhai City, Dalong State, and a fugitive. The person in the photo above is undoubtedly Zhao Xiaohai from Su Yurou Group. The crimes listed below include gambling, prostitution, group fornication, and drug use. Each of the charges individually does not actually have much lethality. At most, it is a public security management punishment. After all, he is a normal person. According to the requirements of Jinhai City, gambling of more than 20 yuan will be punished. Generally, the government will not investigate unless the people report it. The more you look at it, the more outrageous it gets. When did this guy organize gambling? When did he become the leader of a gangbang? You did it. Looking at Su Yurou's burning eyes, Xu Wenping paused for a moment, then quickly shook his head and said, "I don't know about this matter." Snort. Su Yurou laughed, as if she had seen through everything, and said softly, "Last night you said that Han Fangfang would come back and kneel down to beg me, but now it seems that she doesn't even have this opportunity." It's really not. It was indeed not done by Xu Wenping, but after thinking about it for a while, he almost understood the cause and process of the incident. Even though Xu Wenping never mentioned it, Jiang Yuming must have paid a lot of attention to him. He is really a man who hides his merits and fame. He did such a cruel thing without even making a phone call. But when I think about it carefully, why does it feel a bit good? Just as Xu Wenping was about to explain, Su Yurou gently leaned on Xu Wenping's shoulder and said slowly, "Okay, I'm not questioning you. Who knows how many secrets you have?" Su Yurou's call of "little guy" made Xu Wenping blush a little. He turned around and saw Su Yurou's burning eyes. She looked at him with a little agility and said mischievously, "Wenping, you are still very young. I can't wait any longer. How about we find a chance to meet our parents?" Xu Wenping was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He looked at Su Yurou in surprise and asked, "Really?" Su Yurou nodded firmly. Seeing the surprise in Xu Wenping's eyes, her heart was filled with sweetness, but she was also a little worried. Just as Su Yurou just said, she is not young anymore. If Xu Wenping was not so outstanding, perhaps Su Yurou would not be so nervous. But now, Su Yurou couldn't wait to get the certificate with Xu Wenping. After years of doing business, Su Yurou's temperament and observation skills are far beyond those of ordinary girls. She doesn't want to fail to catch the first man she falls deeply in love with because of her reserve. "Why don't we go tomorrow?" Su Yurou suggested again. Xu Wenping naturally nodded rapidly, with absolutely no reason to refuse. At this time, the director of the research laboratory rushed in, nodded slightly excitedly and confidently, and said, "Mr. Xu, Mr. Su, no problem. The results from the laboratory are out, and they meet the medical beauty standards, and they are even awarded 3A, a national medicine level safe care product. This is also a major breakthrough in the history of our Su group. I plan to try and see if I can get to 4A." Hearing this, Su Yurou immediately perked up. Xu Wenping's eyes were calm. Compared with Su Group's previous chemical products, the company's own extraction of traditional Chinese medicine essence and pure plant-based products are, first of all, much safer than their predecessors and far superior to other products. Therefore, this result is not surprising at all. It's even a bit underestimated. If the Su Group had excellent products before, this cold fragrance gel, which was classified as the highest grade national medicine 5A, might be considered to have survived decline. A big stone in her heart fell to the ground. Su Yurou smiled and nodded, saying, "You do it. Contact the sales department later and you two can discuss the specific time and situation. Mr. Su." Su Yurou smiled slightly, then turned to look at Xu Wenping and said, "I have something else to do, so I won't be working today. If there's anything at the company, just call me." The director of the research lab was slightly stunned, but then he understood and nodded, "Don't worry, Mr. Su, you can deal with the major issues of your life first. As for the company's affairs, we will definitely work together to make this project a success." Su Yurou nodded slightly. After the director of the research lab left, Su Yurou began to pack up the items on her desk. Xu Wenping chuckled and said, "Didn't you say you'll go tomorrow? Is there any need to be so anxious? It's already afternoon." Su Yurou said gently, "Since it's your first time, you should prepare some gifts for your uncle and aunt. You will accompany me later. I don't know what your uncle and aunt like." "Well, actually, there's no need. I'm going to the bathroom first." As Xu Wenping was leaving, the sound of the system rang in his ears. "Ding, the selection is complete. The purchase of Tsuehai Xianting Villa is complete. The entry pupil has been recorded, the fingerprint has been recorded, the real estate procedures have been filed in the villar's safe, and the housekeeper's information is being filed. Filing is complete." Xu Wenping immediately had a lot of information in his mind, including a 3D image of the entire villa. So big. It is backed by the mountain and faces the sea. There is endless ocean just outside the stairs. It even has its own swimming area and beach volleyball area. The house is said to be one building, but in fact it is for 5 villas connected together with the front and backyards of varying heights. Even if 100 people live there, it will not seem crowded. The villa is also equipped with a private butler with contact information listed above. The butler's name is Nami. From the name it seems like she is a female, a foreign female butler? Thinking of this, Su Wenping's lips curled up into a strange smile. After a moment of excitement, he called Jiang Yuming in the bathroom. Chapter 38 Preparation for Meeting the Parents. Hello. Chairman. Jiang Yuming answered calmly, with a hint of humility in his tone that made people feel relaxed and happy. Su Wenping didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Did you handle Han Fangfang's matter? Yes, Chairman. Jiang Yuming answered confidently, and then said softly, I'm sorry for what happened to you. I was not able to help you in the first place. You were almost threatened by such a low-level enemy. It was our negligence as subordinates. I promise you that nothing like this will ever happen to you again. Jiang Yuming's behavior was much more appropriate than that of the housekeeper. He spoke a few words in a slightly humble manner, but Su Wenping became more and more satisfied with his general manager. After nodding slightly, Su Wenping expressed his approval and said, well, you did a good job on this matter. But don't be distracted by some insignificant little things. You have to understand that in the future, you will need to manage more than just the Dehao group. You can't neglect your business capabilities either. Su Wenping spoke calmly, but Jiang Yuming gasped. He was obviously surprised, and his voice was even a little trembling as he said, okay, Chairman. I will definitely try my best to learn and try not to hold you back. Yeah. I'll call you when I have time, and we can have a drink and chat. Yes, Chairman, Yuming is at your service anytime. After drawing a pie, Su Wenping calmly hung up the phone. Of course it was necessary to express approval, but if Su Wenping wanted Jiang Yuming to maintain his respect for him, he had to remain mysterious. He hung up the phone with satisfaction, and when he came out of the bathroom, Su Yurou was already ready. They smiled at each other and then went downstairs. While discussing where to buy clothes, Su Yurou was walking towards the car, but Su Wenping pulled her in the opposite direction and said, drive my car. Su Yurou looked surprised. He also said that day that Su Wenping did not drive a Maserati, but later drove Su Yurou's old BMW, so how did he come to the company? When they first met, Su Yurou of course thought that Su Wenping didn't have a car. After all, he was just a recent college graduate. But after a few days of getting to know him, Su Yurou was not surprised to find out that Su Wenping had a car. But just as Su Wenping pressed the car horn, a pair of doors opened like wings. Su Yurou looked at the high-tech Lamborghini Veneno in front of her and couldn't help but be startled for a moment. After all, the girl was not very familiar with cars. She looked at the car logo in surprise and said, this should be a Lamborghini, right? How much does it cost? As for the selling price, it will be more than 20 million. Su Wenping responded with a calm smile, but this thing was in short supply and no one knew how much it was being sold for. Su Yurou was secretly shocked, and while getting into the car, she pinched Su Wenping's waist. Ouch, it hurts. Su Yurou scolded, how many things are you hiding from me, you bastard? I was quite proud of driving a $2 million Maserati, but now you've kicked me into the ditch. Humph, if people talk about it, they'll say that I, Su Yurou, am hanging out with rich men. Su Wenping rubbed his waist, grinned, touched Su Yurou's fair face, and said, Sister Yurou, are you willing to be with a rich man like me? Su Yurou's face immediately turned red. After nodding slightly, she hurriedly got into the car. Before the car door was closed, someone on the other side of the underground parking lot shouted in surprise, wow! Isn't that a Lamborghini Veneno? I actually saw the real thing in Jinhai City. Damn! A $370 million toy. Can the chassis pass the speed bump? Look, who's the rich guy sitting inside? The people in the back were still talking. The car door closed, Su Wenping started the car, and the roar echoed throughout the underground parking lot. Afterwards, Su Wenping felt a pain in his waist again. He was taking a deep breath when he saw Su Yurou staring at him and said, isn't it more than 20 million? You lied to me again. 370 million to buy a piece of iron, how come I didn't notice that you are so arrogant? With this money, you might as well buy another Su group. The figure of 370 million made Su Yurou feel a little distressed. Although she was quite rich, at this moment, she was thinking about how to help Su Wenping save money. He. Su Wenping just kept laughing, while Su Yurou frowned and calculated with her fingers. Even if it's made of gold, it wouldn't be worth that much, right? One tire is a lot of money. With each rotation of the two wheels, a layer of skin is worn away, millions of dollars are worn away. The car attracted a lot of attention along the way, dominating the entire street scenery. As soon as it stopped in the business district, many car fans came up to take pictures. Su Wenping wore sunglasses and went into the mall with Su Yurou as a handsome man and beautiful woman, leaving behind only waves of admiration. Even Su Yurou, who usually has a strong aura, felt a little uneasy. After they entered the mall, Su Yurou finally breathed a sigh of relief when there were no more people looking at her. She whispered in Su Wenping's ear, "You'd better drive less in the future. It's too ostentatious. When you walk on the street, you get almost 100% of the people turning their heads to look at you. No way, those people are just looking at my wife. I envy them so much. Stop talking nonsense. Next time, just open something more ordinary, like Mathers. Okay, everything is up to my Yurou." Su Yurou blushed. Seeing the stores in the mall, Su Yurou put aside what happened just now, and looked around, saying, "Where should we go first? How about going to the supermarket first? Uncle, do you want to drink? Do older people like white wine? I only have red wine at home. How about a stage? There are many such wine sales in shopping malls. Auntie, how about giving me some cosmetics? I'll pack some cold fragrance gel later. And some facial masks." The more Su Yurou spoke, the more nervous she seemed to become, and she held Su Wenping's hand very tightly. This woman with such a powerful aura, when it came to meeting the parents, actually showed some little girl's attitude, which made Su Wenping cover his mouth and laugh. "Just be casual. My father is just a retired clerk. He hasn't had many drinks in his life. Even if you bring it to him, he won't be willing to drink it. My mother is so easy to please, taking you there will be the best gift for her." Su Yurou blushed, but was a little surprised. A young man who drives a 370 million petrol toy really come from such an ordinary family. It's true. For Su Wenping, his father had a son in his old age, suffered a work-related injury while working in the civil service, and retired early at the age of 50. His mother runs around in the Community Women's Federation, and is what everyone calls the red armband auntie, but she is a kind-hearted person. It is just an ordinary family. Who could have expected that there is a time traveler with his own system in this family? Chapter 39 Dinner Encounter. Su Wenping hadn't noticed it before, but this time he realized how hard it was to go shopping with a woman. Even though Su Yurou was wearing 8-centimeter high heels, she seemed tireless. She visited 7 or 8 clothing stores, from formal dresses to casual stores. In the end, Su Yurou tied her hair into a ponytail, wore a white t-shirt and wide leg pants that made her legs look thinner. This outfit can be said to be specially made for Su Wenping, avoiding all famous brands, and changing her entire temperament from a hot and sexy queen to a pure, beautiful, and approachable girl next door. Su Yurou doesn't look her age to begin with, and after dressing like this, she looks even younger and more silly than Su Wenping. In choosing gifts, Su Yurou also followed Su Wenping's advice, focusing on choosing moderate and appropriate gifts, trying not to appear too extravagant, and keeping a low profile and peaceful. But when the two of them were stuffing their bags into the car, Su Yurou was speechless about the Lamborghini's trunk. After finally stuffing everything in, she couldn't help but sigh, "I must never drive your car when I go shopping in the future." I'm afraid Juya never thought in his life that he would suffer such a big setback because of the trunk problem. The engine roared, but Su Wenping did not go home directly. Instead, he drove into the city manor and stopped at a private restaurant. "I'm going to meet my parents tomorrow, and the crisis of the Su group has been resolved. It's a double happiness, let's have a meal to celebrate." Su Wenping spoke calmly, and Su Yurou nodded knowingly, and then looked around this private restaurant which was located in a busy city yet extremely quiet. To be honest, Su Wenping had never eaten in such a high-end restaurant, but he had worked here part-time when he was in college. The work was not much, but the salary was very high, so he knew this place. Quite expensive, anyway. To be honest, when he was working part-time, he felt a little envious when he saw those elite men and women coming in and out. Now we can be considered as emancipated serfs. The two entered the house and were led to an elegant private room. The environment was quite good, the atmosphere was elegant and conducive to the mood. When the two looked at each other, it could be regarded as a formal interaction. Not to mention, the dishes may be a bit expensive, but the restaurant has something special when it comes to creating atmosphere. Whether it is the napkin folded into a rose shape, or the light that is neither too bright nor too dim, but just the right amount of gentleness, they all unintentionally create an ambiguous atmosphere. Ding dong. A gentle bell rang, and the door of the private room opened a crack. A formally dressed female waitress walked in, crossed her hands on her abdomen, elegantly holding the iPad ordering machine, and said softly, "Hello, may I take your order?" Yeah. Everything was normal when they entered the room, but when the waiter saw the two people sitting down, his tone immediately became a little hesitant, and his expression instantly drooped from the gentle smile. Su Wenping didn't think much about it. He was about to turn around to agree. When he saw the waiter's face clearly, Su Wenping was immediately surprised and said, Xiao you? Why? With Su Yurou's sixth sense, she had already noticed something when Yu Yuling's tone changed. Hearing this, she raised her eyebrows slightly and looked at Yu Yuling. When their eyes met, an expression of grievance flashed across Yu Yuling's eyes. Then she deliberately straightened her chest, looked at Su Yurou, and returned to her formatted smile. Your boyfriend is very handsome. Su Yurou raised her eyebrows, naturally sensing the provocation in Yu Yuling's tone, and lightly raised her eyebrows, and took the opportunity to hook Su Wenping's arm, expressing her sovereignty, and said, "Yes, I think it's handsome too. But not a boyfriend." Yu Yuling's brows knitted together slightly, and she said with a fake smile, "So that's how it is. Then I advise you, madam, to be more careful and not spend too much time with other people's boyfriends." You're wrong. Su Yurou was naturally unwilling to admit defeat. She glanced at Su Wenping tenderly and said, "It's my husband." Having said that, Su Wenping felt a pain in his waist, and the soft flesh on his waist was almost twisted into a knot. He could only endure it and take a deep breath, but didn't cry out. Xiaoyu's eyes were slightly stunned, with a flash of loneliness and hesitation, but she immediately smiled softly. "Then madam, you are so lucky to have found such an excellent husband. You must keep an eye on your husband. After all, there are many girls out there who are younger and prettier than you." Xiaoyu hunched her waist and smiled with two dimples. Against the backdrop of her professional attire, her baby face and huge breasts were already a huge weapon, and they seemed as if they were about to burst open and struggle out. Seeing this, Su Yurou naturally did not want to be outdone. She pushed her chest forward, revealing her full but not drooping breasts, which made Su Wenping next to her excited. Seeing that it was a draw, Su Yurou gritted her teeth in her heart. If she had known, she would not have worn a loose t-shirt today. The most important thing is, when the word young came out, Su Wenping felt a huge pain in his waist, and found that Su Yurou also trembled for a moment. It was obvious that his soft spot was touched, and she almost exploded. If Su Yurou hadn't seen Su Wenping blinking frantically, she would have probably stood up and started a fight. Su Yurou endured it and snorted coldly, "Thank you for your concern, but I will take good care of my husband and will not let some scheming people take advantage of it." Okay. Yu Yuling smiled gently, then deliberately half-knelt beside Su Wenping and handed him the tablet ordering device. At the same time, she proudly puffed out her chest so that if Su Wenping even glanced at her, she would be able to see the endless scenery. Su Wenping didn't mean to look, but how could he not lower his head when ordering food? "Sir, could you please order some food?" Yu Yuling deliberately moved very close to Su Wenping, her face almost touching that of Su Wenping. Su Yurou blushed with anger, and she snatched the tablet away, pulled it up, and switched seats with Su Wenping. The two women were squeezed together face to face. Su Yurou panted and looked at Yu Yuling with murderous intent, saying, "Why don't some women know how to respect themselves?" Yu Yuling was indeed not inferior in momentum. She raised her head and chest and smiled. "What's the use of self-respect? You still have to bow down to youth and beauty. Are you as young as me?" Seeing that Su Yurou was about to explode with anger, Su Wenping tried to mediate. "Hey, Xiaoyu. Yurou, the two of you should stop making trouble. What the hell is going on?" Before he could finish his words, two beautiful faces looked at him at the same time, both speaking with murderous intent. "Shut up." On this matter, the two women even spoke in unison without any prior agreement. Fortunately, Su Yurou was sensible. She didn't even look at the menu. She just ordered 2 dishes at random, and then half-heartedly pushed Xiaoyu out the door and slammed it shut. Chapter 40, Nervous Mood. Su Wenping trembled all over. "Yurou, actually. Eat your meal." Su Wenping wanted to explain, but Su Yurou, who was angry, didn't listen at all. The originally harmonious atmosphere of love and affection turned into a tasteless meal and ended in a bad mood. Fortunately, the person who takes orders and serves the food in this restaurant are not the same person. If Xiaoyu came up again, Su Wenping was really afraid that the two women would quarrel, which would be more difficult to control than 10 alongs combined. After the two finished their meal, they went out to drive. After walking for a while, Su Wenping felt pain in his waist again. Hiss! Su Wenping took a breath of cold air. Just as he glanced over, he saw Su Yurou snorting coldly and staring at him. What's going on? You won't tell me unless I ask, right? Why don't you just go find that beautiful young girl of yours? Why are you still paying attention to me? God! Sure enough, when it comes to unreasonable behavior in love, all 100 women are exactly the same, and it has nothing to do with whether they are capable at work. Su Wenping smiled bitterly and said, You didn't even give me a chance to explain. That's not the case. The girl just now is Su Yurou, a salesperson from the Dahao group. I happened to run into her last time. She was seduced by her boss, and then. Su Wenping explained everything in detail, hiding nothing except some ambiguous details. As Su Yurou listened, she also looked as if she had suddenly realized something. I see. Then you said that last time a friend's mother got sick, was it this Xiaoyu? Yeah, that's right. Su Yurou frowned, then glared at Su Wenping and said, The little girl's life story is indeed pitiful. I have no objection to you wanting to save her, but you are a hero who saves beautiful girls, helps people fight bullies, and helps people treat their mothers. The little girl must love you to death in her heart. How can she not be jealous when she sees me? Su Wenping was slightly stunned. Looking at Su Yurou's calm face, he couldn't help but smile gently. You're not angry anymore, Yurou. Su Yurou rolled her eyes and said, Do you think I'm that kind of naive little girl? Humph. It's normal for an outstanding young man like you to have a few confidants outside. It's just a coincidence. It's not that I don't trust you. I just hate you so much. What do you hate? You have seduced the little girl's heart and ignored her. If it were me, I would have wanted to kill you. Su Wenping shuddered slightly, then laughed dryly and said, Okay. I'll try to have less contact with her in the future. Su Yurou smiled sweetly, and then said softly, There's no need for that. You're being cold on purpose. I don't know how upset the little girl must be. Just get along normally. Young people are full of emotions, and they come and go. Look at that little girl, she's so straightforward and doesn't know how to hide her feelings at all. Su Yurou thought to herself with her little tricks, can 100 of her defeat me? Seeing Su Yurou being so confident and considerate, Su Wenping responded gently, Yurou, I am blessed to have you. But to be honest, an experienced and intellectual woman like Su Yurou would not be like those little girls who hold onto a piece of honey and refuse to let go. On the contrary, Su Yurou understands better that a boy's body cannot be tied down, and only by binding his heart with tenderness can this boy belong to her. After returning home and taking a bath, the two hugged and kissed each other goodbye. Although there was some reluctance in their eyes, they went back to their rooms tacitly when they thought about meeting their parents tomorrow. As soon as she lay down on the bed, Su Yurou began to feel a little uneasy. She tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. She would get up from time to time to look in the mirror, then get up from time to time to apply skin care products. She was tormented until the second half of the night before she fell asleep exhausted. Although everything that needed to be prepared was ready, Su Yurou was still somewhat nervous. This was naturally because of her age. After all, she was a generation older than Su Wenping. She didn't mind it at first, but today, Yu Yuling's words, young and beautiful, hurt her heart, and Su Yurou couldn't help but feel flustered. If I go to see them tomorrow, and the uncle and aunt think I'm too old, will Wenping be in trouble? The next day, early morning. Seeing Su Yurou yawning early in the morning, Su Wenping, who came up with breakfast, said strangely, What's wrong? Yurou, it looks like you didn't sleep well last night. It's okay, I'll go touch up my makeup. Su Yurou got up early and put on her makeup. Su Wenping had already prepared everything and was ready to leave with his bag. Su Yurou looked at herself in the mirror and shook her head. No, this lip gloss is too bright. I'll repaint it. Oh, no need to put on the eyeliner, wait for me to wipe it off. Su Yurou struggled for a long time, but still clenched her fists, bit her lip and looked at Su Wenping and said, Oh, will it make me look old? Su Wenping smiled gently and said, You are almost as beautiful as a fairy, and you are still not satisfied. Let's go. Su Yurou then smiled and nodded. As the two of them walked downstairs, Su Yurou said softly, Don't drive a Lamborghini. Your car has a low chassis and small space, and it can't hold the gifts. Besides, it's too ostentatious. Just drive a Maserati. It won't be too ostentatious and it's acceptable, right? Okay, I'll do as you say. Su Wenping smiled and naturally did not offer any opinions. Instead, he felt that Su Yurou's arrangement was very good. Although it was a bit unexpected, he still embarked on the journey. Su Wenping also felt half relieved. Su Wenping knew his family very well. After his father retired, his hobby was chess, so he didn't care much about his father's life and didn't ask about his daughter-in-law's problems. The mother who is in charge of the screening is the type who has been deeply influenced by the concept of marriage. She is afraid that her son is not good enough and cannot get married. I am afraid that she cares less about age than Su Wenping. The car drove slowly, gradually out of the city, and entered an older resettlement community. When the car stopped, Su Yurou was still a little absent-minded, and woke up and asked, "Are we there yet?" Su Wenping nodded slightly, got out of the car and picked up the bags. Su Wenping arrived at the door and just as he rang the doorbell, Su Yurou hid aside with a red face, not daring to show her face. Seeing her so shy, Su Wenping found it a little funny. "Who is it?" "It's me, Mom, open the door." "Wenping? Here I come." Su Wenping's mother was in her 50s. She had a kind face and a warm smile, and Su Wenping had inherited a lot of those traits. There was some excitement in Shu's mother's eyes. When she opened the door and saw Su Wenping holding a lot of bags in his hands, she couldn't help but become even more excited. With shining eyes, she stuck her head out and looked around outside the door. After a round of inspection, Shu's mother glared at Su Wenping and asked, "Alone? What are you doing back here?" As she spoke, Shu's mother rolled her eyes, her face darkened, and she even planned to close the door directly. Chapter 41 Su Yurou's Methods. Hey, mommy. Seeing his mother about to close the door, Su Wenping hurriedly held the door, shouting, "Yurou, come up quickly." Su Yurou was called and finally stepped onto the stairs with a red face, holding a few gifts in her hands. She shyly looked at Shu's mother and said in a weak voice, "Hello, auntie." The mother's face paused, a flash of surprise appeared in her expression, and after glancing at Su Wenping, her attitude immediately changed 180 degrees. She hurriedly opened the door and shouted, Hey, hello, girl. You little bastard, you wanted to bring the girl back, but you didn't even tell me in advance. Old man. Here I come." The mother just shouted domineeringly, and Su Wenping's father inside responded hurriedly. My mother immediately said, "Put away the things on your table quickly. We have guests." The mother came forward, took the things from Su Yurou's hand, turned around and stuffed them all into Su Wenping's hand, and took Su Yurou's hand, as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for many years. She smiled and walked in first, saying, come in and sit down. Oh, I only heard Aunt Wang say that the girl was pretty, but I didn't expect her to be so pretty. You are attracted to our Wenping, it is really a blessing for him in 8 lifetimes. Come on, girl, sit down and have an orange. While the mother was peeling oranges for Su Yurou, Su Wenping's father, Su Xinian, had just put away his chessboard and chess records. He pushed up his stone glasses from a distance, and after seeing Su Yurou clearly, he nodded slightly, showing a little appreciation. Old man, go wash some fruit. Okay. No need, uncle and aunt, you are too polite. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Faced with the enthusiasm of Su Wenping's parents, Su Yurou felt very uncomfortable. She declined and cast a pleading look at Su Wenping. As Su Wenping put the gifts away, he said softly, It's okay, Yurou. My parents are just so welcoming. As he spoke, Su Wenping also glanced at his mother and said, Mom, please stop holding my wife's hand. Don't you see that she is embarrassed? Hey, you kid. The mother laughed in anger, rolled her eyes and said, Okay, that's right, it's not my fault. Old man, stop working and go buy some vegetables. Cook something for Wenping and the girl later. Good. The mother was also quite excited at first, but after she calmed down, she moved a little further away from Su Yurou, looked at her carefully, and said, Girl, your name is Yurou, right? Yes, auntie. My last name is Su Yurou. What a nice name. What do you do for a living? Do you have a day off today? Did this delay you a bit? The two began to chat in whispers. Su Yurou felt the intimacy and acceptance of Shu's mother, and finally relaxed a little. She had time to pay attention to Su Wenping's family. Although it was an old allocated house, it was quite large, with 3 bedrooms and a living room. It was earned by his father from a work-related injury. Of course, this didn't make much difference in Su Yurou's eyes, but the furnishings, furniture, and cleanliness in the house made Su Yurou appreciate them somewhat. In fact, before she came, she had imagined that 2 elderly people from different eras, who had experienced hard lives, should not pay so much attention to the quality of life. But the fact is that this family is indeed very cultured. Whether it is the calligraphy on the walls, the read books on the shelves, and some awards and trophies, the atmosphere is filled with the fragrance of books. Su Yurou's communication skills were not weak after all. At the beginning, Shu's mother was more enthusiastic, but after chatting for a while, she didn't know what topic to change and immediately took out large and small packages from the gift box. Su Wenping leaned over to listen, and heard Su Yurou whisper to Shu's mother, "This one is better, and the price is right. Auntie, the one you're using is so expensive. I've used this one before. But it's said to be a limited edition, so I didn't get to buy it later." "Oh. Yurou, you're really thoughtful. Hee hee." Su Yurou smiled and said, "Auntie, you can use it with confidence. I'm in the cosmetics business, I have internal channels, and it's very cheap. Yeah. You have to give me a discount price when the time comes." "What are you talking about? How dare I ask you for money? We have Wenping. It's time for him to show his filial piety." The 2 of them were chatting about Su Wenping in the back. Shu's mother glared at him and said with a look of disappointment, "Har har. I don't know how long it will take to count on him. Alas. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, Yurou. Our boy is quite honest, but he has no ability." "What do you mean he is incompetent?" "Auntie, you just see him pretending. In fact, he is very capable, but he just didn't tell you. It is said that Su Yurou is intelligent and sensible." After a few words of conversation, Su Yurou knew that Su Wenping was rich. Not only her, but even Su Wenping's parents seemed to be unaware of it. Hearing this, Shu's mother was shocked and asked, "Is this true? Then I can't see through my own child." Su Yurou covered her mouth and smiled, saying, "He is very capable. He is just a little cautious. Why don't I tell you? I will talk to him for you later." Shu's mother was also a sober person. While the 2 were talking, she quietly gave Su Wenping a thumbs up, expressing her satisfaction with her daughter-in-law. After hearing this, she laughed and said, never mind. Anyway, it's all your young generation's business now. How can we care so much? By the way, when are you planning to hold the banquet? Where's Wenping? Has he ever been to your house? When will my old man go to visit your parents?" Su Yurou was slightly stunned, and a look of desolation flashed across her eyes. Su Wenping hurriedly stood up and said, "Mom. Why are you rushing me so much?" Finally, he smiled gently and sat over, holding Su Yurou's hand, and said slowly, "Yurou and I have already discussed it. Let's find a time to get the certificate in the next 2 days. The banquet is not an important matter. Let alone me. Yurou is also a little busy at work. How can she have time for those empty etiquettes?" Shu's mother was slightly stunned at first, but then she smiled in surprise and said, that's good. Okay, anyway, get the certificate first, and we'll deal with the mileage issue later." "No. The daughter-in-law got her first and she didn't have to spend any money for the time being, which was exactly what Shu's mother wanted. How could she be unhappy at all?" She nodded her head and agreed. Chapter 42, Prelude to the Ceremony. Although she agreed verbally, Shu's mother's eyes were always on Su Yurou's face. Su Yurou's face was red. She looked at Su Wenping with a hint of gratitude and a hint of approval in her eyes. Finally, she nodded implicitly. Shu's mother's eyes became more and more excited. Coincidentally, at this moment, her father pushed the door open carrying bags of vegetables. Okay. Then you guys chat first, I'll go get some food, we can eat and chat slowly." "Mom, Auntie, let me help you." Su Yurou stood up quickly and called, "Mom," without saying anything. Shu's mother immediately smiled like a sunflower, shaking with excitement. She quickly pushed Su Yurou away and sat down again, saying, "No hurry. Let the old man pick the vegetables first. I'll go see what he bought. You guys chat first." As soon as my mother came into the room, she started whispering something with my father. When they got excited, they couldn't help but have a quarrel or two. The mother gnashed her teeth and made a gesture. It was obvious that the father had not understood the spirit of the leadership. The mother came out with a smile, glared at Su Wenping and said, "It will take a while to cook. You can take Yurou downstairs to walk around and get to know the way, so that the child won't be able to find the house when he comes back later." Then he looked at Su Yurou gently and said, "The houses nowadays are all the same, like matchboxes. Sometimes I can't tell them apart. There's an activity center downstairs. You two can play badminton or something." Su Wenping and Su Yurou were both smart people. They naturally realized that their mother wanted them to go out, so they nodded immediately and prepared to go downstairs together. Just after Su Yurou went out and closed the door, and was about to go downstairs, she was grabbed by Su Wenping. The two of them leaned close to the door with their ears tilted. Su Yurou was a little surprised at first. Then, Shu's mother's angry voice was heard. "You useless old thing. You really will never understand what I am saying." The girl came in and gave Yu's one, and she was furious. "Don't you understand? I. What do I know? Can't you, a woman, just speak your mind? Why are you so complicated and even more difficult to deal with than the boss? Still arguing with us, huh? Hurry up and prepare the red envelopes. TSK, I'm so pissed off, you old ghost." "Oh, so that's what it is. Lian, you know I'm stupid, so just try a little more. Calm down quickly, anger is harmful to your health, what a." The last sentence came from Su Wenping's witty and humorous father. Su Yurou, who was eavesdropping outside, immediately burst out laughing. Perhaps because he laughed out loud, there was suddenly no sound from inside. Su Wenping hurriedly pulled Su Yurou downstairs, and when he turned around, he heard the sound of the door opening. She held it in for a while, and only after she went downstairs did Su Yurou hold her stomach and burst into laughter. "Har har har. I'm dying of laughter. Uncle is really humorous and funny. Come on Lian, one more." Su Yurou teasingly offered her red lips. Su Wenping had no intention of retreating and kissed Su Yurou directly on her red lips. The latter blushed and turned her head away and said, "You actually sneaked up on me. Humph, I won't pay attention to you anymore." Having said that, her jade hand was still between Su Wenping's arms, and she avoided looking over. Su Wenping deliberately leaned closer, looked at Su Yurou with a smile, and said gently, "He. Did you agree just now? What did you agree to?" Su Yurou pretended not to know. Su Wenping leaned close to her ear and said, "Of course we're going to get the marriage certificate. Are you not keeping your word? Who doesn't keep his word?" Su Yurou turned her head and gave Su Wenping a glare. Then, he said, "Well, I agree." "What?" "I said I agreed." Su Wenping was so excited that he waved his hand and threw Su Yurou into a princess hug. The two of them laughed and talked happily. Su Yurou kept shouting, "Put her down quickly, put her down quickly. Har ha har ha." After playing around for a while and walking a few steps, the two squatted by the park and took a rest. They looked into each other's eyes with infinite tenderness. Su Yurou's expression flickered, and then she suddenly said, "Wenping, Auntie just asked about my family's problem. Thank you for helping me resolve it." Su Wenping raised his eyebrows slightly. Seeing this, Su Yurou pouted and said, "Don't you have anything to ask? Why don't you ask me why I'm alone?" Su Wenping gently stroked Su Yurou's hair and said in a gentle voice, "What's there to ask? First of all, I like you, not your family. Second, if you are a kind-hearted woman like you, why do you need me to ask more questions if you want to say it?" The two smiled knowingly. Su Yurou's expression became more resolute. She leaned on Su Wenping's shoulder and said, "Wenping, it's not that I don't want to tell you. I promised some people that I would not tell everyone some things. But I hope you believe me. I love you." Taking advantage of this feeling, Su Wenping couldn't help but want to give her another deep kiss. The gaze between them was already filled with affection, but through the gaps in the grass, Su Wenping was slightly startled. When he raised his head, he saw a little boy of about 5 or 6 years old lying on the hood of the Maserati where they had parked, scratching something in his hand. "Hey! What are you doing? Get out of the car." Su Wenping was so angry that he was about to be born and ascend to heaven. He saw the boy holding a knife and seemed to be painting on his Maserati, which had already left a big scratch. Su Wenping was about to rush forward, but Su Yurou took a closer look and pulled Su Wenping's hand away, saying with a smile, "Don't be angry. You're just a kid and don't know anything. Su Yurou walked slowly towards the car with a gentle smile on her face, and said softly, "Little guy, listen to your aunt and get out of the car, okay? Fuck. I can be wherever I want. Do I need you two to control me?" Who would have thought that the child, although small in age, had a bad temper? He jumped up and pointed at Su Yurou and yelled at her. Xu Wenping was about to step forward, but was stopped by Su Yurou. Su Yurou deliberately frowned and said, "Little guy, if you don't listen, your sister will be angry." Before Su Yurou could finish her words, the naughty kid reached into his pocket and shouted, "Look at me scattering money all over the sky." A handful of pebbles in his hand immediately scattered and flew towards him with great force. Xu Wenping's eyes were filled with anger, and he immediately stood in front of Su Yurou, looking back and throwing away the small stone. This time, Su Yurou wanted to pull her, but Xu Wenping didn't listen, striding forward with big strides, gritting his teeth and saying, "You little brat, you really don't know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is." The boy pretended to run, but his pace was no match for Xu Wenping, and he was immediately grabbed and lifted up. The naughty kid was still waving his hands. "Let me go, let me go." Chapter 43. Then pay the compensation. "You stinky man, you bastard. You adulterer, let me go. Do you know who I am? My parents are here and they won't let you off." Xu Wenping was already furious, so he turned around, grabbed the kid under his arms, and hit him hard on the butt. I don't know where this little brat learned so many vicious words. Although the sentences don't make sense, they really make people tremble with anger. Wow tilder dad, mom, grandma. Someone is hitting Dudu, wow tilder come and save me. After being hit, the child cried out in pain. At this moment, a sharp voice shouted, "Let go of my grandson. What do you want?" Good, good, good. So it's you, the stinky boy from the Xu family. You incompetent loser, why are you taking your anger out on my grandson? Put my grandson down now. When Xu Wenping saw the old lady and the child's origin, he understood. The old lady's surname was Wang, and she lived in the same building as them and was their neighbor. The old woman's son was an alcoholic, and the child's mother had a bad reputation and often stayed out at night, leaving the child unsupervised. He was a troublemaker since he was young. Just the fact that he scribbled on their door had caused countless quarrels. It hadn't happened to Xu Wenping before, so he didn't pay any attention to it out of consideration for his parents' reputation. But this time, he was really angry. Seeing Aunt Wang coming to grab the child, Xu Wenping threw her away and said, "Aunt Wang, please be reasonable. Your grandson scratched my girlfriend's car like this, and you come here without asking why, but you scold me first." It turns out that there is no point in reasoning with such an old woman. Aunt Wang fell to the ground immediately after failing to snatch her grandson away. She slapped the ground and cried, "Oh, heaven, oh, earth. This is so unfair. Everyone, come and see, an adult is bullying my grandson. This is really bullying." As he started to howl, the residents who were walking by also gathered around. Aunt Wang howled, "Isn't it just a scratch on your old car? Xu boy, you were also raised by Aunt Wang. Dudu is just a child and doesn't know much. Tell me, why are you arguing with her?" Although the people who came over to watch were pointing and talking, no one went up to speak for Aunt Wang. There was nothing they could do. Dudu's father was a gangster and everyone tried to avoid him, but everyone knew that this kid was a troublemaker and Aunt Wang was unreasonable. Ding, the mighty host is being bullied by the naughty kid. The famous Chinese saying is, "He's still a kid." How will the host respond to such a moral high ground threat? Choose to publish. First, swallow your anger. Let Aunt Wang and the child go. After all, he is just a child. The host is generous. Reward, 100 children's park game coins. Second, explain the truth. Although the other party will definitely not listen, the host still decided to convince them with virtue. Reward, highly respected, a black pennant. Third, teach the kid a lesson. Use a tough approach to make him realize his mistakes. Reward, top-notch cooking skills, and a 3,000-year-old ginseng taken to strengthen your body and prolong your life. Is there still a need for choice? Su Yurou, who was standing next to him, pulled Xu Wenping and said slowly, "Wenping, or should we forget it? This is my first time at your house, so don't leave a bad impression on your neighbors. No. We can't just let this go. Xu Wenping held up the naughty child and looked at Aunt Wang coldly. Aunt Wang, your tricks don't work on me. Naughty child, what's wrong? Can a naughty child make mistakes and be irresponsible? Okay. You heartless thing, just wait and see. I'll call my son, I'll call your parents, I'll ask them to come down and take care of you. Seeing Aunt Wang waving people, Xu Wenping remained indifferent. He chuckled and whispered in Su Yurou's ear, don't worry. I'm just getting rid of harm for the people. Not long after, Xu Wenping's parents came down. When they saw Xu Wenping carrying the naughty child, they looked at Aunt Wang, who immediately stood up and started to make a fuss. Oh! Old Xu, Lian. Look at your son. He has become successful now and doesn't even take us neighbors seriously. Look how he bullied my grandson. He's such a grown man, but he has no shame. Seeing his parents' questioning eyes, Xu Wenping looked at the car calmly and said, Mom, if this was my own fault, it would be fine, but this car is my girlfriend's car. It was scratched like this by this naughty kid. I can't just let it go, right? This. A glimmer flashed in Xu's mother's eyes. She turned to Aunt Wang and shrugged. Aunt Wang, you saw it too. This, I can't do anything about it. Seeing this scene, everyone watching nearby couldn't help but cover their mouths and laugh. Aunt Wang was also furious now. Okay. It's just a scratch on your old car. Just put my grandson down and we'll pay you for it. At this moment, his disheveled son rushed down from upstairs with a fierce look on his face. He came to Aunt Wang and asked, Mom, what's wrong? Snort. Aunt Wang pointed at Xu Wenping and said, it's your good neighbor Xu Wenping. He's just making irresponsible remarks here because Dudu scratched his car. Hurry up, pay him the money and bring the child back. His son immediately looked around, and when his eyes fell on the scratched Maserati, he was slightly stunned after seeing the car logo. At this time, a neighbor whispered, Auntie Wang. I looked at his car, what should it be called? Maserati. Just the paint on it, I'm afraid he'll have to repaint the whole car, it'll cost at least 200,000 or 300,000 yuan. What are you talking about? The original paint on this car has been scrapped, and the value alone has dropped by 400,000 or 500,000. Can 200,000 or 300,000 be enough to settle it? What car do I want? Just drive away and give me a new one. That's right, Aunt Wang. You're wrong now. It's such a valuable thing, I can't just let you forget about it, right? Hearing the neighbor's support, even Xu Wenping's mother was surprised. She didn't expect that this piece of iron would be so expensive. The disheveled son looked at Aunt Wang and said timidly, Mom. I can't afford the compensation. Aunt Wang's expression changed as she said in a daze, how could it be a broken four-wheeler? It's only a few tens of thousands of yuan at most. How could it be so expensive? At this time, the naughty child seemed to realize that his grandmother and father could not protect him, and he immediately started crying loudly. Grandma and Dad. Save Dudu. Dudu doesn't want to be caught by this bad man. War. The crying sounds became louder and louder. Chapter 44, Small Punishment, Big Warning. Aunt Wang looked around and saw everyone's determined expressions. She finally realized that she had seen it too simply. She couldn't help but panic and looked blindly at Xu Wenping's parents. His uncle and aunt, this, I don't know either. Dudu is still a child after all. Why don't you put his diploma aside first and let us talk slowly? Finally, Aunt Wang kicked her son and said angrily, what are you doing here? Why don't you go and find the money? Oh. Change. Aunt Wang's son was obviously just a paper tiger. Although he looked quite ferocious, he was still shocked by such a huge amount of money and was speechless. He hurried upstairs to look for it, and soon, he came down with a stack of loose bills. Seeing him hand it over, Xu Wenping looked at him with contempt and said, this is only a few thousand at most. My family is really out of money. You good for nothing. Take out the card from my drawer. Aunt Wang was about to cry. With tears in her eyes, she took 2 steps forward. Her knees softened and she was about to kneel down, but Su Yurou stepped forward and gently supported her. At this moment, Su Yurou also saw through Xu Wenping's thoughts. Her face was neither tepid nor angry, neither humble nor arrogant, and she said slowly, Aunt Wang, please don't do this kind of courtesy. Little girl. Wenping, it's our Wang family who is sorry for you too. Oh, ever since that damned man passed away, and my son is such a loser, our family has never had any savings. there's only 50,000 yuan in my card. Please put my grandson down, please. At this moment, the naughty kid's eyes were swollen from crying. Seeing that his grandmother and father couldn't save him, he showed expressions of fear, panic and pity for the first time. Su Yurou looked at the naughty kid calmly and said, "Auntie, since I dare to park my car here, I am not afraid of you scratching it. If it were someone else, I would have to pay compensation without missing a single word, but after all, you are Wenping's neighbors." R. Right. Su Yurou smiled softly and said, "You just said Dudu is just a child, but he is so evil at the age of 3 or 5. Today he blew up my car. If he blew up someone else's car or robbed a bank tomorrow, you will probably have no place to regret it." Seeing Su Yurou taking action, Xu Wenping just smiled knowingly. Xu Wenping didn't expect the Wang family to pay much money in compensation. They looked like a facade, but in reality, they were very empty inside. Su Yurou smiled and said, "How about I give you some advice?" "Oh. All right, girl, you tell me. Aunt Wang suddenly felt like she had found a life-saving bodhisattva and nodded repeatedly. Su Yurou stared at the naughty kid coldly and said calmly, "You don't have to pay for the compensation. I'll go down and fix the car myself. But I want everyone to supervise and let this naughty kid pick up the broom and clean up the entire community. Also, you should go to each of the families that the naughty kid has harmed and apologize. How about that?" Aunt Wang was a little excited at first, thinking that Su Yurou would be kinder, but when she heard this, her expression changed immediately and she shouted, "Can a child this young hold a broom? If I apologize, this..." Aunt Wang's face turned pale and blue, but when she saw the indifference of the onlookers and the look of her son next to her, she realized that they were the ones who made the mistake this time. Compared with the hundreds of thousands of dollars in compensation, what was the point of sweeping the floor and apologizing? His daughter. "How about I help my grandson sweep?" Su Yurou shook her head calmly. We agree. Aunt Wang's son next to her nodded excitedly. Xu Wenping didn't say anything more and calmly put the naughty kid down. The naughty kid was crying and was about to rush forward, but was slapped by his father and fell to the ground. "You little bastard, you feel uncomfortable if you don't cause trouble for me every day. Why don't you apologize to your uncle and aunt?" The naughty kid saw his father getting angry and realized his mistake. He quickly came to Xu Wenping and Su Yurou and bowed, saying, "I'm sorry, uncle. I'm sorry, auntie." The naughty kid's father smiled at the two of them and said, "Wenping, don't worry, even though I'm not a good person, I will educate this bastard even if I risk my life. I won't let my mom spoil him anymore." It's said that the dad kicked the naughty kid again. "Hurry up and get the broom." The residents really supervised this matter tacitly. A small kid carried a broom that was twice as big as him and started sweeping with difficulty from the entrance of the community. At this time, the voice of the system also sounded in Xu Wenping's mind. Ding, selection completed, rewards issued. A stream of culinary knowledge was immediately deeply planted in his mind. In an instant, Xu Wenping went from a novice who knew nothing about cooking to a first-class chef. Su Yurou grabbed Xu Wenping's arm to show her understanding, and they went upstairs together. Xu Xinian covered his mouth and said, He. It's been so many years, and I haven't felt so relieved today. It's a good thing. If this grandson of the Wang family is not taught a lesson, he will sooner or later become a bad guy in the future." Xu's mother didn't seem so happy, but a little stressed. She leaned close to Su Yurou's ear and said, "Yurou, you are a little too generous. Let them sell their house, and you should also compensate them for the money. I was scared, it's really a lot." "Oh, that's just a woman's opinion. Who among the younger generation cares about a few pieces of paper money as much as we do?" "Shut up, you old bastard." Everyone went upstairs and through their window, they still saw Wang's Dudu sweeping the floor inch by inch under the supervision of his father. It was not known whether the naughty kid had been educated this time, but looking at his father's angry look, it seemed that he was really concerned about his son's politeness. If you are too ignorant, how can you achieve great things in the future? As soon as everyone entered the house, Xu's mother slapped her thigh and said, "Hey! Look at me, there's still food stewing in the pot, how could I have forgotten about this?" When they entered the house, the vegetables in the pot were all burnt, and a large black mass formed on the outside. Xu's mother said with a bitter face, "This damn naughty child, the lesson is still not enough." Xu Wenping came in and saw that the battlefield was really difficult to clean up. Seeing his mother scratching her head, he knew that she must be feeling very uncomfortable, so he immediately said, "Okay, Mom. Go and chat with Yurou. I'll cook today's dishes." "You do? You can cook a dish?" Su Wenping rolled his eyes and said, "You are underestimating your son again." "Don't worry. This is a good opportunity for me to show Yurou my cooking skills." Mother Shu was slightly startled, took off her apron doubtfully, and said, "Then I'll leave it to you." Chapter 45, The Tip of the Iceberg. "Don't worry, just go ahead." After all, the two of them had not been there for long, and it seemed that only one dish had failed, so there were still a lot of ingredients left, so Su Wenping began to work. At first, Su Yurou was a little surprised to see Shu's mother walk out of the kitchen. Then the two girls gathered at the kitchen door, looking shocked. "Auntie, has Wenping been such a great cook since he was a child?" "I don't know about this either." A kitchen knife was flying in Su Wenping's hand, as if it was growing on his hand. He cooked the simple dish so smoothly and fluently. Both the selection of ingredients and the control of the heat left the two women stunned. Not long after, although there were only 2 pots, for dishes and a soup were cooked together. Su Wenping came out with the dishes. Seeing his mother and Su Yurou watching, he smiled strangely and said, "What are you two doing here? Stealing my skills." "Your mother, do I need to steal your master? I've been cooking for my whole life, can you still be better than me?" But when the dishes were served, my father was the first to be attracted by the bright colors of the dishes. A simple steamed sea bass looked as white as jade and exuded a sweet fragrance. He was about to eat it with chopsticks, but my mother stopped him and said, "Let's talk about it after everything is served." The stir-fried rapeseed, placed one by one on the plate, looks like an emerald flower. This was followed by the bright and rosy twice-cooked pork and a dish of mixed vegetables. Even Shu's mother, who was blocking Shu Xinian from eating, couldn't help swallowing at the smell. Until the last dish of chicken soup was served and boiled, the rich aroma immediately attracted everyone's interest. Su Wenping picked up the small bowl, filled one bowl for each of them, and introduced it softly. "Today's soup is the main dish. The ginseng in it will strengthen your body and prolong your life. It's very good." Soon, everyone started to eat with relish. Su Yurou wanted to be reserved at first, but then she found that it smelled so good that she hurriedly ate 2 bowls of rice, covered her bloated stomach, and wanted to pick up some more vegetables. "You are such a pretentious boy. When I asked you to pick some vegetables, you hid away like Monkey King. If it wasn't for cooking for your wife, would your parents never get to taste it?" The father wanted to say something straightforward, but was interrupted by the mother with a chopstick. Ouch. After the dishes were served, Shu's mother suggested bringing some wine. After the Maserati incident, Shu's mother had a hint of worry on her face. After everyone clinked their glasses, Shu's mother grabbed Su Yurou's hand and said softly, "Girl, you just said you were a cosmetics dealer, and I really believed it. Look at you, driving such an expensive car. I'm afraid our entire family's wealth is not as valuable as your 4 wheels. Isn't our Wenping marrying above his station? But don't worry, girl." Shu's mother took out a red envelope and said, "This red envelope is a little gift from us 2 elders, you must accept it. I will give Wenping another card later, but you can't let him give you 3 gold jewelry from you. This is a token of my love, girl, you have to understand." Su Yurou blushed and shook her head quickly. "No, auntie. Wenping and I are truly in love. Besides, do you listen to his lies? He is much richer than me." Hearing this, Su Wenping's parents looked at each other in surprise. Su Wenping took the red envelope from his mother, and then stuffed it into Su Yurou's hand and said, "Take it. After all, what your parents gave you has a different meaning. Don't let the old man down." Su Yurou took it calmly. In fact, Su Wenping was originally thinking about how he should explain the fact that he was rich to his parents. After Su Yurou's preparation, he found it easier to talk. Looking at the 2 elders, Su Wenping shrugged calmly and said, "Actually, I started tinkering with some things when I was in college. You know Bitcoin, right? Anyway, it was unreliable and unsafe at the beginning, so I never mentioned it. But now it seems that the market is stable. Later, I bought some shares of Dahao Group, that is, Dahao Holding Group in our Jinhai city. Now I do have some savings." The 2 elders' faces changed drastically. "Bitcoin? What is that?" Shu's mother asked suspiciously. Su Wenping's father pushed his glasses and said, "I have heard of this. It is a virtual digital currency. It sounds a bit confusing, but $1 is worth a lot of gold. I heard that if you have the technical skills, you only need to invest in a computer to mine it. Is that right? Su Wenping nodded quickly and said, yes, yes, yes. I was lucky and dug out some. Only then did Shu's mother realize what was going on. Although she was still a little suspicious, she didn't say anything more. After Su Wenping pondered for a moment, he said, actually, I've thought about this, Mom and Dad. Look at our neighborhood, all the people who live there are people with no manners. I also bought a house in the Zhuhai-Xianting Villa district not long ago. After we're done, we can move there together. We won't be messed up by such a naughty kid. You two are getting old now. When you have a son, you can take care of him in his old age, grow flowers and grass, and play chess. Villa? Hey, you're really good at hiding it. You're better at pretending than your dad and I. You've made our whole family worry about your wedding funds. Dad rolled his eyes happily. At this time, although Shu's mother did not say anything, she noticed the flash of shock in Su Yurou's eyes. Although things returned to normal soon, Shu's mother began to wonder, why would a big boss who drives a car worth 2 million suddenly lose interest when he heard about a villa? Su Yurou had a strange look on her face, and her expression stayed on Su Wenping's body for a few moments. Her heart was filled with turmoil. It is estimated that not many people in Jinhai City know the 4 words, Kui Hai Xianting, so it is no wonder that Su Wenping's parents don't know about it, but Su Yurou knows it. This is a villa area that is not for sale to the public. Since its establishment, even in the entire province, only a few large Ivy League families have lived there. Most of them are wealthy people or retired leaders who are well known both domestically and internationally. It can be said that this scenic villa area does not even have any commercial registration, because it cannot be bought with money. Only those who meet certain qualifications can live in it. Generally speaking, for people at this level, money no longer means much to them. Therefore, the person in charge of Kui Hai Xianting will not mention any property issues when transferring the property. It's a question of value. Not to mention that Su Yurou didn't have the qualifications. In Su Yurou's opinion, even if it was a senior executive of the Dehao Group, it would be difficult to get in. Is this called having a little stake in Emgrand Group? Chapter 46 Unexpected Invitation. Let's talk about this later. Your father and I have lived here all our lives, so we still have some feelings for each other. Besides, what villa are you talking about? There's no one familiar around here, so your father won't be able to find a chess friend. My mother stood up and spoke while clearing the dishes. My father looked slightly stunned and said, is it hard to find a chess friend? I don't have an opponent right now, even AlphaGo. Before he finished speaking, seeing his mother's murderous look, his father suddenly came to his senses and realized what had happened. He hurriedly stood up to clean up the dishes and said, yes, yes, your mother is right. Su Wenping was slightly stunned, then smiled bitterly. He didn't continue to persuade her, because he understood what his mother meant. He always thought that it was not convenient for them, 2 old people, to live with young people. But there is no rush about this matter, and one's mindset cannot be changed overnight. I can just bring my parents over later, and they will naturally stop talking after they settle down. Seeing her parents getting up to clean up, Su Yurou also wanted to help. After being rejected, the 2 of them sat idly on the sofa. Su Yurou then leaned close to Su Wenping's ear and said, a small shareholder of Dehao Group. Although it was not an explanation, nor was there any doubt, the few words were filled with a strange flavor. Su Wenping's mouth twitched and he laughed, major shareholder, major shareholder. Su Yurou's eyes showed understanding, and then she pouted her lips in grievance and said, you can live in Zhuhai Xianting, but you don't take me over and live in my big flat. Su Wenping, you are really hiding it. Ahem. You didn't ask either, didn't you? Hee, I'll take you there later. Su Yurou's eyes were full of deep thought. Just at this time, Su Wenping's phone rang. Seeing that it was Jiang Yuming calling, Su Wenping smiled at Su Yurou and was no longer shy. The moment she picked up the phone, Su Yurou's expression flashed. She intuitively felt that the temperament of the big boy in front of her had changed slightly. Although he was still warm, somehow, he gave people a feeling that he was in control of the world. Xiaojiang, what's the matter? Jiang Yuming's voice trembled slightly as he spoke slowly, Chairman, we bought at the lowest point of Tongrun Equipment. There is news that Tongrun Equipment is undergoing a merger and reorganization. This is great news and it is hard to find in the market. Our expert group predicts that it will have at least 7 daily limits. Xu Wenping was slightly stunned, then he remembered that he had arranged for Jiang Yuming to buy a stock, then nodded gently and said, "Well, I see, how much did you buy?" 100 million. 100 million. Yeah, about what I expected. Jiang Yuming smiled and nodded. Don't listen to the expert group's estimates. Tongrun equipment will have 13 consecutive daily limits. After the 13 limits, you just need to sell it on time at the highest point. 10, 13, hiss. Jiang Yuming took a deep breath. Although he admired Xu Wenping very much from today's daily limit, he still subconsciously doubted it when he heard the 13th consecutive limit. This is impossible. There haven't been any stocks in the market for many years. Har har, don't worry. Sell it on time after the 13th stop, and then, you can make a 5-point profit yourself. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll hang up first. I have a call. Really? There was a flashing incoming call on Xu Wenping's phone, but he was a little surprised. How long had it been since this person contacted him? Dehao Group, Stock Index Research Group. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Yuming looked at the experts who were watching the market and said suspiciously, 7 daily limits are rare. But do you think Tongrun equipment will face 13 daily limits? Har. The expert from the Dehao Group stared at the stock market, then looked a little strange, and his eyes drooped. After looking for a while, he said softly, Boss Jiang. Although Tongrun equipment is facing huge good news, 13 daily limit increases are a bit unrealistic, right? Seeing Jiang Yuming frowning, the expert quickly said, Boss Jiang, although my stock market research is pretty good, even if you are the most famous expert in the world, being able to make a forecast for 7 trading days is already the limit. And according to my business experience, 13 trading days of daily limit increase is a bit outrageous. After all, even if it is a merger and reorganization, isn't 7 days enough for similar companies to discover and react? Jiang Yuming glanced at the expert, pinched his chin and said, this kind of single-handed buying of individual stocks is like gambling. If there really is a scene of 13 daily limits, I have to wonder, will the merger and reorganization of Tongrun equipment be personally operated by the chairman? That doesn't make sense. Why would you buy your own stocks if you can do it yourself? For large enterprises like them, even if they have investments in the stock market, they are only in the core market. They occasionally buy large cap stock indices or make some futures investments. When buying individual stocks, there is only one, and you can even know the daily limit number with certainty. Even cheating doesn't work like this. Jiang Yuming wiped his sweat, thought for a while, and simply didn't care about it. In his hands, this investment was not a big deal, and it could even be said to be the smallest investment that Jiang Yuming took the initiative to handle. But it was this investment that made him so entangled that he couldn't sleep all night. That doesn't make sense. Why? You say you can make money just by making money? Give me 5 points, and I can make hundreds of millions with just a little help. This chairman is so generous that it makes people a little panic. Jiang Yuming thought, if this really comes true, I must be more respectful in the future. It is true. If Xu Wenping knew what Jiang Yuming was thinking, he would probably feel pity for him. Young man, I think you don't know what a system is. After hanging up Jiang Yuming's phone, Xu Wenping picked up the new call and immediately said with a smile, Leopi, why did you think of calling me? Oh my god. It's really you, Brother Ping. I spent a long time searching for your phone number. The man on the other end was a little excited. When Jiang Yuming heard the startled voice, he couldn't help but smile. Although they hadn't been in touch for a long time, the caller was indeed his childhood friend Chen Pai. As I recall, the two of them grew up playing together. After entering high school, Chen Pai dropped out and his family moved away. It has been several years since we last had any contact. It's not that Xu Wenping didn't think about contacting him, but he heard that the guy was in jail for committing a crime, and Xu Wenping didn't dare to ask about such bad things. Hearing this, Xu Wenping chuckled and said, You've been released from prison, Lao Pai? When will it be? I'll come out tonight to welcome you back. Several months. Chen Pai hesitated and said, Forget it, wait until you come out and we can talk face to face. But the person who invited you today is not me. Chapter 47, Clothing Change Incident. This young man who was once full of vigor and vitality seemed to be a little depressed by the pressure of life. He spoke slowly, Sun Ya asked me to find a way to contact you. She said she wanted to organize a class reunion. We are all old friends from the graduating class of the 3rd grade of junior high school. Times have changed. Come out and sit down. Su Wenping looked surprised and couldn't help but chuckled. We haven't been in touch for many years, why are you suddenly doing this? It's okay to get a free meal, but I'm with my girlfriend. As Su Wenping was speaking, he couldn't help but recall his junior high school memories when he heard Chenpi mention the name Sun Ya. They were a group of children at that time. Su Wenping was studious, but Chenpi and Sun Ya were both rebellious and a bit disobedient. The girl named Sun Ya pursued Su Wenping fiercely at that time. Ahem. Wow, you even have a girlfriend. Brother, I hope you are doing well. I hope you are better than me, not much better. Chen Pai gnashed his teeth and heard Su Wenping's calm smile. Then he said helplessly, forget it, if you have a girlfriend, just bring her along. Sun Ya should also bring her boyfriend along. Oh, by the way. Ahem, I brought my girlfriend with me too. Hee hee. Chen Pai chuckled, which made Su Wenping's mouth twitch. He smiled bitterly and said, you kid, you are really teasing your brother Ping. Okay, I'll discuss it with my girlfriend. You must come. M Grand Riverside Hotel. Private room 2 on the 36th floor. If it was Sun Ya who called, Su Wenping might have refused without a second thought, but since it was a childhood friend whom he hadn't seen for many years who made the invitation, it was a bit difficult for Su Wenping to refuse. Su Wenping turned his head and glanced at Su Yurou. There was no disguising of the previous conversation. Su Yurou smiled softly and said, then go ahead. You're free today anyway. Su Wenping nodded and said with a smile, my childhood friend is really interesting. I haven't seen him for many years. I really want to sit down with him. Su Yurou smiled and nodded, then turned to look at Su Wenping's parents and whispered, why don't we leave early? The car is in such a state that we need to drive it over to get it fixed. Besides, I can't go to a class reunion with you dressed like this, can I? You'll lose face. Say that again. Su Wenping smiled gently and said, just you standing next to me with this face makes me feel twice as proud. Hateful. Su Yurou glared at Su Wenping. Having said that, Su Wenping still stood up and shouted to his mother, Mom, Yurou and I will go first. Chen Pai has been released from prison, I will go to see him. Leaving now. Little Chenpi is out. Mom came out wearing an apron, and when she saw Su Wenping nod, she smiled and said, okay, then you guys go out and get together. You have to go home tonight. Got it. The mother's mind was completely on her daughter-in-law, and there was a hint of threat and suggestion in her eyes as she looked at Su Wenping. Su Wenping nodded his head repeatedly, smiled bitterly and said, I know. I will definitely come back in the evening. This. Hey, bring Yurou back with you. Okay. My mother quickly stood up to see her off, and Su Yurou responded with a smile, and then the two of them walked out of the house. He drove straight back to Su Yurou's house. Su Yurou called her assistant to drive the car to the repair shop. Then, she stood in front of the closet and said slowly, what level is this party? Should I dress more formally, or more casually? Su Yurou was naturally very careful about the socializing, which made Su Wenping smile bitterly and said, what level is there? They are just a few ordinary junior high school classmates, just be casual. How about wearing this? Su Yurou held a loose white shirt in front of her and said while looking in the mirror, they should all be young people. If I dress lightly, will I look younger? Yeah, that makes sense. Then go out, I need to change my clothes. Why don't you just change it? Why do you let me go? Without waiting for Su Wenping to say anything, Su Yurou Hongchen gently tapped Su Wenping on the lips and said, be good. Wait for me outside, I'll change and show you. All right. Su Wenping pouted to show his dissatisfaction, but as he walked out, he lowered the sound of his feet, pretended to close the door, and hid behind the cloakroom. Su Wenping took off his t-shirt, revealing a large area of milky white skin. His black underwear was bulging out hugely, and there were some textures of abs on his smooth abdomen. When the light shone on it, his whole body seemed to be glowing. Su Wenping stared with his eyes wide open, and almost drooled. Su Yurou didn't notice it at first, until he took off his pants. She looked back in the mirror in the cloakroom and saw Su Wenping with a golden face. Su Yurou's face suddenly turned red to her teeth, as if she was on fire. She quickly took a piece of clothing to cover herself, threw away the pants she had just taken off, and gritted her teeth and said, Ayer. What are you doing? Get out quickly, get out quickly. Seeing Su Yurou's shy and coquettish look, although Xu Wenping was furious, he quickly nodded and stopped teasing her. Before leaving, Xu Wenping did not forget to pinch Su Yurou's pants in a lewd manner and said with a smile, "It smells so good." Bad guy. Su Yurou wrapped herself in clothes and locked the door herself, then she changed her clothes. Xu Wenping came out, washed his face, and lit a cigarette. Only then did he feel his anger subside slightly. He was sitting on the sofa when he saw Su Yurou come out with a red face. A simple and loose white shirt, paired with black pencil pants, her legs are slender, like tender bamboo joints in spring, and she is wearing a pair of silver pearl strap high-heeled sandals on her feet, with her tender toes exposed, giving her a sexy vibe with a hint of literary elegance. This was the first time Xu Wenping saw Su Yurou's jade feet. Her feet had a beautiful arch and her skin was fair and tender, like a work of art carved out by nature. Su Yurou's face was still red with shame. After coming up, she threw herself on Xu Wenping's legs, pinched Xu Wenping's waist with her nails, and gritted her teeth and said, "You are such a bad guy, such a pervert. How can you have such a hobby as peeping? Ouch, it hurts," Xu Wenping said as he put his arms around Su Yurou's waist. Unexpectedly, Su Yurou escaped like a loach, looked at Xu Wenping coquettishly, and said, "What? Do you still want to take advantage of me?" I'm not allowed to take advantage of my own wife. What a shame. Dead look. Su Yurou rolled her eyes, fixed her hair, and said, "Let's go. Are you still busy? I'll let you have enough when we get home tonight." Really? Su Yurou did not respond, but ran out of the door first in her high heels. Chapter 48 Encounter. Wait, I need to change my clothes too. These past 2 days, Xu Wenping was wearing the suit that Su Yurou bought for him last time. The peaked lapel suit gave him a very imposing aura, but he was not the centerpiece of this class reunion. Su Yurou turned around after hearing this, still blushing, and said, "Change it yourself, I'll put it on the table for you." So thoughtful. Xu Wenping looked at the clothes that Su Yurou had prepared, a white shirt that matched Su Yurou, a simple and elegant executive jacket on the outside, ordinary light black pants on the bottom, and a pair of sneakers. It's no wonder that this kind of executive jacket, which carries the mature aura of a literary and artistic leader, goes well with anything. Wearing it with leather shoes will make you look mature and steady, while wearing it with sneakers will give you a youthful vibe when you go out to work. Just like the chief secretary of some big boss. It was the first time that Xu Wenping saw the watch next to it. This was not the one he bought last time. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed that Su Yurou bought it when she bought things for her parents yesterday. Xu Wenping couldn't recognize the brand. The pure black color gave it a high-tech feel and made him look more youthful. "Why do you wear glasses?" Xu Wenping put on half-framed glasses a little strangely, looked in the mirror, and couldn't help but smile. It's true that clothes make the man. This outfit is exactly what a young and successful but low-key and introverted senior intellectual looks like. The combination of steadiness and youthfulness brings out the best in each other. I give it full marks. When the two of them stood together for comparison, Su Yurou, who was dressed more simply, seemed to be deliberately restraining her temperament, like a little woman who only cared about accompanying others. Obviously for the purpose of socializing, Su Yurou deliberately put herself in a low position. These many details touched Xu Wenping's heart. While going downstairs, Su Yurou said softly, "Why don't we drive that BMW? I think that all the young people of your generation can't be like you, who achieved success at a young age. Your classmates would be so sad if they saw your Lamborghini. We're thinking about it together again." Xu Wenping smiled lightly. After getting in the car and starting the engine, Xu Wenping changed into new clothes and felt very proud. He stroked his hair in the rearview mirror and said, "It would be even more perfect if I could get a thermos cup." Yes, my great leader Xu. Su Yurou smiled knowingly, opened a large storage box in front of the car, took out a brand new, washed cup, and placed various teas in the small compartment, and said, "Are you satisfied?" The peak of life. Xu Wenping stepped on the accelerator and launched the car. Relatively speaking, the location of this party is quite far away. Generally speaking, when people hold banquets in the city, they will choose the Haoju Hotel. Haoju is also a group, and it specializes in hotels. Even when their Dahao group holds a banquet, Haoju is the only choice. Dahao Riverside Hotel is actually a subsidiary of Xu Wenping Group. Although its grade is not bad, it is a bit unprofessional compared with Haoju Hotel. It mainly relies on the income from the riverside scenery and entertains more traveling clients. It's cheaper. After all, even if someone is hosting the party, the cost cannot be ignored. The car drove out of the outer ring and saw their hotel right in front of them, only about 700 or 800 meters away. Su Wenping looked carefully and suddenly found that a car had broken down on the side of the road. It was a second-hand Volkswagen. There was nothing strange about the car breaking down, but when Su Wenping saw the long-haired man with dyed yellow hair and wearing a denim jacket, he couldn't help but slow down because of the familiarity. Isn't he this tangerine peel? Are those two arguing? Su Wenping showed a look of doubt. In front of Chenpi was a woman wearing black stockings and marten boots. The woman was plain looking, but she was wearing heavy makeup. The two looked at each other and seemed to be arguing. Su Wenping was not sure, but Su Yurou said bluntly, "It's obvious, the two people's car broke down, and the woman is blaming the man. That woman is calling for help. She will probably be taken away by another man soon." Su Yurou raised her eyebrows slightly and asked, "Why? Do you know her?" Su Wenping's mouth twitched, and he said, "Being taken away? Not really." Su Yurou looked like she saw through everything and said, "That's too much. Look at the bags and watches that woman has. She's wearing fake stuff, so it's obvious that she's very materialistic. Depend on." Su Wenping's face turned pale and blue. Su Yurou was right. Not long after, a brand new Passat overtook Su Wenping and headed towards the place where Chenpi broke down. Su Wenping's car slowly approached. The gold digger got into the car while yelling, fuck you. You're driving such a shabby car, and you're trying to pick up girls like others. You are Mr. Chen, you are shit." Chenpi's face turned pale and blue. The girl got into the Passat and the young man driving the car couldn't help but waved at Chenpi proudly. Su Wenping gritted his teeth, exchanged a glance with Su Yurou, and slammed the steering wheel in his hand, causing the BMW to crash in front of two Volkswagens. Although Su Yurou's car is an old model, it is only because Su Yurou has higher social needs. In fact, it is still very new, and the price is nearly 1 million, which is several degrees more luxurious than the previous two Volkswagens. "Damn, how are you driving? Hey, brother, drive more carefully." The young man in the Passat was about to start cursing, but when he saw the BMW 7 Series logo, he immediately changed his tone and spoke with a smile. Although he was stopped, his momentum did not rise at all. So true. Chenpi looked surprised. Su Wenping lifted his collar and got out of the car in a serious manner. He was dressed like a chief secretary today. Seeing that it was Su Wenping, Chenpi raised his eyebrows slightly. Before he could show his surprise, he saw Su Wenping slightly bowed in front of him and said, "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. You have to go out. Why don't you call me first?" Chenpi's mouth twitched. The girl in the Passat was still cursing, but after seeing this scene, a look of hesitation suddenly appeared on her face. At this moment, Su Yurou also got out of the car. With Su Wenping's intelligence, she naturally understood from her actions that her friend was being bullied. She tied her hair into a ponytail with a hair tie and tucked her shirt inside her clothes, immediately giving off a professional vibe. Her face showed nervousness that was comparable to that of an Oscar-winning actress. Holding the keys of the Lamborghini in both hands, he handed them forward and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, it's all our negligence. Your car has been maintained, and we didn't expect it to take so long. I'm so sorry." One man and one woman are both standard business assistants. The BMW logo suddenly became dazzling. The woman was slightly stunned, then she pushed the door and got out of the car very naturally with a smile on her face. "Peepee. Oh, you are teasing me again." Chapter 49, Tangerine Peel. "Oh." Chenpi came to his senses and his waist and abdomen immediately straightened up. He put his hands behind his back, frowned seriously, and just shook his hair, which was really inappropriate. "That's what I said. I didn't find my keys when I got up this morning. Comrade Xiaoshu, don't you tell me before you do anything next time." Su Wenping suppressed his smile, but remained serious. He lowered his head and said, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Chen. I'll ask Xiao Jiao to come over and take care of your car right away." "Good." Chenpi patted Su Wenping on the shoulder, then turned to look at his boss and sighed, "Let Xiao Jiao fix the car. My old companion has been with me through a lot of hardships, so don't mess with it. I'm going to keep it." "Got it." Okay, Mr. Chen. Immediately afterwards, Xu Wenping dialed the number and said, Xiao Jiao, I'm on Yangjiang East Road, about 500 to 600 meters away from the Yangjiang Hotel. There is a black Bentley on the side of the road. Please call a tow truck to take it for repair. At this time, Su Yurou just stood behind Chenpi, and Chenpi's whole temperament became more dignified. The heavily made-up girl looked around and moved closer. Although she was covered in fake goods, her eyesight was quite good. In just a few minutes, she was able to gauge the quality of Xu Wenping and Su Yurou's equipment. Look at the key to the Lamborghini, and your eyes will sparkle even more. Not a lighter. It's true. She pouted and walked to Chenpi, grabbed Chenpi's hand and said, Hey, Peepee, don't be angry, I know I'm wrong. Chenpai looked at the shy look of the girl, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He casually withdrew his hand from hers, raised his finger and pointed at her shoulder and said, I have already given you a chance. Xiaoshu, let's go. Peepee, Peepee. The woman panicked and hurriedly followed up, please listen to my explanation, Peepee. Didn't we agree to be together last night? Su Yurou immediately went up to open the car door carefully, while Xu Wenping stepped forward to block the woman. Although he struggled desperately, it was a pity that it was of no use. Do you know the relationship between me and your CEO Chen? Get out of my way now, or else when CEO Chen stops being mad at me, you'll be in big trouble. Har har, you don't need to worry about that, young lady. The two got in the car and the BMW drove away. The woman clenched her fists, looking unwilling, and turned around and tried to open the Passat's door angrily, but unfortunately, after trying twice, it didn't move at all. The man inside looked at the woman in surprise and whispered, Psycho. The Passat drove away. The woman was stunned for a moment, then stamped her feet in anger, and then gnashed her teeth in the wind on the street. Oh my god. This feels so good, so satisfying. Chenpai struggled to hold the back seat, then, with a smile on his face, he stretched his face forward and said, Brother Ping, you are so smart. Of course not. When has your brother Ping ever been untactful? Hee hee. Chenpai smiled and said, I am so unlucky that I drive a junky car that breaks down on the roadside. Now. I can't even pick up girls. But Brother Ping, you're doing pretty well. You even drive a BMW. Xu Wenping raised his eyebrows slightly and said calmly, Do you think your brother Ping is the same as you? Isn't it easy and pleasant to own a BMW? So, what are you going to do after you get out? If you can't do it, wait until the party is over and do it with me. Xu Wenping has no bad intentions towards Tangerine Peel. To be honest, Chenpai was sentenced to 3 years in prison, which was more or less related to Xu Wenping. Chenpai was very loyal. There was a man who bullied Xu Wenping. More than a year after the incident, Chenping felt that he had gained some power and went to cause trouble for the man. Although it was because of the feud between the two, it cannot be said that Xu Wenping had nothing to do with it. Let's wait and see. There are some tough guys at the class reunion today, and I want to make some friends with them. Oh, by the way. Thank you, sister-in-law. You really gave our pie too much face just now. Our pie's face almost turned red. Brother Ping and I naturally have nothing to say. Sister-in-law, please don't hold any resentment in your heart. Su Yurou's sister-in-law was very graceful, and she smiled softly, We are all family, why are you talking about this? I'll find you some girls later. Young man, you still have energy to release. Chenpai's face turned red when he heard this. However, Su Yurou had obviously grasped Chenpai's weak spot. Instead of refusing, the latter nodded and said, Thank you so much, sister-in-law. Hee hee. To be honest, this is just my little hobby. As they talked, their hotel was already within reach. As the car entered the parking lot, Xu Wenping also asked, By the way, Apai, you just said there were a few tough guys. Who are they? Where did the tough guys come from for our class reunion? Chenpai stroked his chin and said, I was mainly attracted by Sun Ya. I heard that she found a boyfriend and is doing very well. I thought if I could get some good friends with him, I could at least make some extra money. After all, you can't develop on your own, Brother Ping. I also need to think about expanding my world. It's good to have this idea. Damn. Seeing that the car was about to park in the garage, Xu Wenping stepped on the accelerator, only to see a large Land Rover parked in the parking space first at lightning speed. Xu Wenping was not a person who could be bullied. He rolled down the car window and was about to start cursing, but the middle-aged man in the Land Rover started to complain first. The middle-aged man was about 30 years old, with a bulging belly, a slicked back hair, stubble, and small eyes. He said, "Can you drive? Damn, you're so slow to park, go to the next parking spot." "Fuck, who the hell do you think you are? Get down here and talk to me." Without waiting for Su Wenping to speak, Chen Pai rushed out of the car first. Chen Pai got angry and his eyes suddenly turned bloodshot. Su Yurou was a little surprised to see this. Originally Su Wenping was planning to get angry, but when he saw Chen Pai, an irritable person, starting to get angry again, he quickly got out of the car and planned to pull the cart. "When this guy gets angry, it's like a knife stabbing into people's hearts. I just got out. If I commit a crime again, I will be in trouble. After all these years in Jinhai, you are the first one who dares to talk to me." "Hubby, don't." Just as the middle-aged man was about to come down to compete, a female voice suddenly came from the passenger seat. A curly-haired woman in a dress smiled softly and said, "Husband, don't be angry." Chen Pai, you're doing this again." "It's me, Sun Ya. Honey, these two are my classmates. Chen Pai and..." Sun Ya lowered her eyes slightly and said, "Su Wenping." Chapter 50, Turning a Blind Eye. "Fuck, classmate." Sun Ya's husband scratched his head, raised his eyebrows slightly, and his anger subsided by half. Hearing this, Chen Pai's expression instantly calmed down, and he immediately smiled and said, "You must be the CEO Sun Ya mentioned." "Oh yes, I am white." Har har. The flood almost washed away the Dragon King Temple. Mr. Bai raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard this, then he looked at Su Wenping and said, "You are not a good driver. I, Bai Shouchen, have never been defeated by anyone in the fight for parking spaces. Besides, your old BMW can't compare to the performance of my Land Rover." In fact, Su Wenping was a little angry in his heart, but seeing that he was his classmate's boyfriend, Su Wenping was too lazy to argue with him. He nodded slightly and parked the car in the parking space next to him. Several people got off the car, and Bai Shouchen was also waiting. When they were about to go upstairs together, they saw Su Yurou getting off the car. Bai Shouchen's eyes immediately straightened up, and he quickly came over to shake hands, smiling and said, "Who is this girl?" "A classmate. My girlfriend." Su Wenping stood in front of them, and Bai Shouchen was unable to step forward to offer his courtesy. His expression suddenly changed slightly. Fortunately, at this moment, Sun Ya came out to smooth things over and said, "Oh, husband, let's go upstairs and talk. The other students are still waiting." HMPH. "I really don't like this boy." Bai Shouchen pointed at Su Wenping and said coldly, then looked at Su Yurou with a lecherous look and said, "Sister, you should be more careful in the future. What kind of boyfriend are you looking for? He's so young and still carries a thermos cup." Sun Ya hurriedly pulled her boyfriend forward, and her eyes also turned to Su Yurou, with a flash of loneliness in her eyes. In fact, Sun Ya is not ugly and has a tall figure. The dress she wears highlights her curves. She has a semi-standard oval face, which looks quite majestic. Among ordinary girls, she is already outstanding. But even so, when he is next to Su Yurou who is wearing casual clothes, the difference in temperament is obvious at a glance. No wonder Bai Shouchen wanted to shake hands right away. The two women were simply not on the same level. In fact, the reason why Sun Ya wanted to call Su Wenping this time was because she remembered that she had pursued Su Wenping in the past and felt a little unconvinced, so she wanted to show that she had married a husband of her dreams. Unexpectedly, Sun Ya felt a little frustrated as soon as they met. Everyone went upstairs. The door of the private room was wide open. Familiar faces were chatting inside. When they saw Sun Ya lead the fairy in, the man sitting in the vice chair seat immediately shouted, "Oh, you are such a noble lady. Our class beauty son is finally late. Hey, isn't this class beauty son? This should be Sun Banhua's ideal husband, Mr. Bai. Hello, I have heard of your name before. Everyone sit down, treat it like your own home." As soon as Mr. Bai arrived, he took control of the situation and sat in the main seat without hesitation. Because everyone was trying to be courteous to Mr. Bai and Sun Ya, Su Wenping and others who came in later were ignored. They quietly pulled out chairs and sat down. Sitting down at this moment, Su Wenping already knew what the occasion was today, and he just filled his thermos with water without saying a word. Oh my, our top student has taken his seat, why is no one paying attention to him? Wenping, you are a rare guest. There must be someone who is so tactless. A young man wearing glasses sitting next to Su Wenping smiled and said, Come on, Wenping. I'll toast you. Okay, thank you very much. Well, among us old brothers, few have gone to college. You should have graduated, right? What kind of job do you have now? Look at the outfit you're wearing. Are you a secretary in a large company? Oh yes, assistant, the boss's assistant. Su Wenping laughed twice. As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Shoucheng, who was in charge, interrupted and said, Damn, these days, top students are useless. After graduating from college, you still end up working as a secretary for someone else. It's not as good as being your own boss, right? Yes, what Mr. Bai said makes sense. In Jinhai City, a brick can kill a bunch of college students. What's the point of studying? Only by starting a business can you get rich. That's right. Oh, by the way, Su Wenping. It suddenly occurred to me that when we were in school, did the class beauty Sun Ya pursue you? Didn't expect Sun Ya to find a perfect husband like Mr. Bai, right? Sun Ya's face turned pale and blue. She only looked up at Su Yurou from time to time, and then felt ashamed of herself. Hearing these people's sarcastic voices, Su Yurou raised her eyebrows slightly, and she and Su Wenping thought of the same thing tacitly. The whole place was filled with smoke, and everyone was swaying in all directions. Apart from being a little more upscale, it was no different from a gathering of street thugs. If they stood up to refute at this moment, they would be considered truly uncultured. Chen Pai had just entered the room and was planning to offer a cigarette to Mr. Bai, but he never found the opportunity. At this moment, listening to them criticizing everyone and praising Mr. Bai, he lost interest. Everyone knows that Mr. Bai is rich. Mr. Bai, what do you do specifically? If there is a suitable business opportunity, you can also help the brothers. As we chatted, the topic got to the point. When someone mentioned this, Bai Shoucheng only raised his eyebrows slightly, with a frivolous look in his eyes, not modest at all, and said, In this day and age, just do whatever makes money. If you want to know what's the best thing to do right now, it's of course making money from women, beauty industry, cosmetics, etc. Don't underestimate me because I make hundreds of millions a year without any pressure. Recently, we have a cooperative project with the Su Group. Do you know the Su Group? It is a well-known beauty company that we in Jinhai have a close relationship with. Their new product is just one word. It's a huge profit. Have you not heard of the Su Group? You must have heard of the Dehao Group, right? As soon as these words came out, a young man slammed the table and said, I've heard that before. Isn't the place where we are having dinner today owned by the Dehao Group? It is one of the largest companies in Jinhai. Brother Bai, you can even talk to the Dehao Group. It's no big deal, just spend some money. I often sit and eat and drink with their chairman. If it weren't for this relationship, would I be able to earn hundreds of millions a year? Bai Shoucheng waved his hand with satisfaction. Sharp. The chairman of the Dehao Group. He is a mysterious figure. I have never heard of him showing up at any event. It must be someone from your circle. Slurp. Su Wenping picked up the thermos cup and took a sip of tea. He and Su Yurou looked at each other and saw a hint of embarrassment in their eyes. Good job. This bragging, did you prepare the manuscript in advance? Chapter 51, Making a Scene. Boss Bai, can I ask what the specific name of your company is? Su Yurou suddenly spoke, but in this atmosphere, it did not seem abrupt at all, but instead just fell into line with Bai Shoucheng's words. In fact, Su Yurou's presence was noticed by many people as soon as she entered the room. She was beautiful, indeed very beautiful. But they were not classmates, and Su Yurou acted shy and gentle, so others had no reason to ask questions. Bai Shoucheng had a pair of slanted eyes, always staring at Su Yurou. When he heard this, his expression brightened up and he said softly, Hey, little girl, do you understand this industry? Su Yurou smiled modestly and said, It's a bit of a coincidence. I'm also in the beauty industry. Maybe I'll need Mr. Bai's support in the future. Har har har, no problem. Bai Shoucheng waved his hand and said, My company's full name is Baiyu Beauty Distribution Company, Limited. Let's add each other's contact information. I'll send you the company's location and we'll slowly discuss the business. Bai Shoucheng was about to stand up, but at this moment, he was pulled by Sun Ya next to him. Bai Shouqing's eyes darkened, and he seemed a little unhappy. Then he laughed and said, "Okay, we'll talk about business later. Today is a party for everyone, let's not talk about this for now. As the elder brother, I'll play around first, and everyone should eat and drink well. Let me make it clear first, if anyone can't drink, just leave as soon as possible." Har har, brother Bai said that. That must mean risking your life to keep a gentleman company. Come on, let's all have a drink with Mr. Bai. Su Yurou's expression was gentle. She just took out her cell phone and sent the company name that Bai Shouqing had just reported to her assistant. Xu Wenping really had nothing to worry about. Su Yurou has long been a skilled social figure in socializing and is probably even better than Xu Wenping in speaking and doing polite things. Bai Shouqing was surrounded by people, drinking glass after glass of liquor. Xu Wenping and others were sitting down. Chen Pai was a little impatient, snorted coldly, and whispered in Xu Wenping's ear, "Brother Ping, this old guy is really pretentious. If it were my previous personality, I would have knocked him down with just 2 hammer blows." Hearing this, Xu Wenping rolled his eyes and scolded with a smile, "Why are you still impatient? I know you are good at fighting, but now is not the time to use knives and guns. Once this is over, whatever you want to do, I will support you." Chen Pai grinned. Staring at Bai Shouqing, who was being forced to drink, Chen Pai suddenly rolled his eyes and whispered to Xu Wenping, "Brother, I'm going to give this guy a beating." Xu Wenping was surprised. Without waiting for the order, Chen Pai quietly went out of the door. Not long after, he came in quietly with 2 boxes of liquor and exchanged them for the original liquor. Then, he gave Xu Wenping a smirk. The wine that Bai Shouqing had prepared this morning was a bottle of liquor that cost around 500 to 600 yuan. It was of a medium quality and was sufficient for this occasion. At this moment, what Chen Pai brought in was clearly the limited edition collection of Mauzi. In a specialty store, it would cost about 7 or 8,000 yuan a bottle. If it were sold in a hotel, it would probably cost more than 10,000 yuan. Wow, 6 bottles in a box. Chen Pai is so mean and mean. He is playing tricks on me. However, Xu Wenping, who was drinking tea from a thermos, gave Chen Pai a thumbs up. In fact, they were not the only ones who noticed this action. Several people on the field also saw it. However, Bai Shouqing was already getting too excited at this moment, and none of the other students wanted to point it out. "Aren't you rich? This thing can at least be used to test one's strength." Bai Shouqing finally got carried away, picking up the bottle and guzzling it. He must have been thinking about it for a long time. He came forward with a glass of white wine, gently pushed aside the tangerine peel, and said to Su Yurou with a lewd smile, "Hee. Girl, it's rare that we are in the same industry. Today, I, old Bai, will toast you a glass. Let's toast to our future cooperation." If she were an ordinary woman, seeing his lustful expression, she would probably be so angry that she couldn't wipe her face. But Su Yurou just smiled faintly, picked up the cup, and gently clinked it with Bai Shouqing. "Little sister, drink first as a sign of respect." Su Yurou gulped down their wine in the goblet, which was at least 3 or 4 taels. If Xu Wenping had not noticed that she had replaced the white wine in the goblet with mineral water, he would have probably said it was terrible. Before a fat hand could come up to take advantage, Su Yurou overturned the cup and instead held Bai Shouqing. "Girl, generous." Bai Shouqing frowned and glanced at the wine glass, then finally picked it up and drank it all in one gulp. He felt like his stomach was turning upside down and he looked very uncomfortable. Before he could smile, Su Yurou raised her glass again and said with a smile, "Mr. Bai, this is the first time I meet you today. This business cooperation is not going to be a one-way deal. I'll toast you another glass. Good things come in pairs and our cooperation will last a long time." Gulp gulp. Chen Pai picked up the bottle with a wicked smile and poured wine for Bai Shouqing again. Bai Shouqing was stunned for a moment, then looked down again and saw that the white soup in the cup was exactly the same as poison. He gritted his teeth and finally drank it all. After drinking this cup, his whole body flipped over, a chair was immediately overturned to the ground, and Bai Shouqing also began to sway. "This is the end." Bai Shouqing was about to speak when Su Yurou smiled gently and said, "2 glasses of wine have been drunk. Even though I have made friends with Brother Bai, cooperation is cooperation and friendship is friendship. This glass in my hand is to wish Brother Bai a happy new year. It is also my personal blessing to Brother Bai. Brother Bai, if you can't drink much, just do whatever you want. I'll drink first as a sign of respect." "Damn it. These 3 glasses of wine weighed 1 pound. Seeing that Su Yurou remained calm, Chen Pai, who was standing behind her, couldn't help but secretly give her a thumbs up when he heard this sarcastic blessing. My sister-in-law is so awesome. A girl drinks first to show her respect. If you just take a sip, doesn't that mean you are admitting that you can't drink much and are not generous enough? But now Bai Shouqing seemed to be suddenly awakened and waved his hand to grab Su Yurou's cup. Su Yurou did not resist and let Bai Shouqing take the cup and smell it. Hey! You didn't expect this cup to be real. Brother Bai, don't you trust me? Bai Shouqing's face turned pale and blue, and he finally fainted. He handed the cup back with one hand, but Su Yurou generously replaced the cup, pulled the string from the wine bottle, poured it into the cup, and drank it all in one gulp. Bai Shouqing gritted his teeth and started pouring the cup in his hand, but this time he really couldn't hold it any longer. After only drinking half a cup, his stomach began to churn. Then he held it in his mouth and staggered to the bathroom. A sound of dry heaving came from the bathroom. Chapter 52 The Secret is revealed. After Su Yurou's performance, everyone in the audience began to speak a little softer. At this moment, they finally turned their scrutiny to Xu Wenping, who was holding the thermos with a calm face. Put it on Su Yurou, who was still elegant and charming even after drinking 3 glasses of wine. No matter how stupid she is or how little she has ever seen a big scene, Su Yurou's performance just now can be described as magnificent and remarkable. Just a little bit of her temperament can make one feel that she has really been through big scenes and has the demeanor of a big sister. It was just concealed by the simple clothes. Xu Wenping had a cigarette in his hand and would take a sip from his thermos cup from time to time. He looked relaxed, as if what was happening before him was not unexpected at all. Even a fool can see that Xu Wenping is not panicking at all. Look again at the secretary-like executive jacket. Is this really an assistant from some company? Why does this look like the temperament that only the city master's secretary has? Everyone began to whisper and doubted the identities of Xu Wenping and Su Yurou. A few minutes later, there was a loud bang in the bathroom, and Bai Shouqing slammed the door open. Sun Ye was already inconvenient to move in her dress, but now she had to go up and hold her boyfriend's hand. After being helped out, Bai Shouqing's face darkened as he moved towards Su Yurou viciously, gritting his teeth and saying, "Girl, now that you've drunk the wine, there must be another explanation for what's next, right?" As soon as Bai Shouqing finished speaking, Chenpi stood up silently with the wine bottle in his hand, and his eyes began to emit a faint red light again. Everyone kept silent. Bai Shouqing's true intentions are now revealed. Come on. Give me a kiss, and today's matter will be over. Otherwise, our matter will never be over. Bai Shouqing smiled lewdly and put on a fat and stinky face, and was actually going to hand it over. His pig-like image made everyone present look down on him. Seeing that Chen Pai and Xu Wenping were getting a little restless, Su Yurou just smiled and said that everything was fine. I have to say, she is really good at controlling people's hearts. Before Bai Shouqing could get closer, Sun Ye grabbed him and said with gritted teeth, Bai Shouqing, what on earth are you doing? This is my class reunion. Don't you have any face for me? I'll fuck you. As soon as the words were spoken, Bai Shouqing suddenly waved his hand, and Sun Ye lost her balance, her high heels slipped, and she rushed forward. It was an emergency. Besides Su Yurou, the only person sitting in the front row was Xu Wenping. Xu Wenping immediately supported Sun Ye's shoulders to help her stand steadily. Sun Ye, this kind of person is not worth it. The posture was ambiguous, and their faces were only a few centimeters apart. Sun Ye's eyes were flashing with slightly fluctuating tears. When she looked into Xu Wenping's calm gaze, she suddenly felt infinite grievance and endless tenderness. Look! Look! At this time, Bai Shouqing began to show sarcasm on his face, saying, Look at your bitch, don't think I don't know why you organized the class reunion, isn't it just for this bastard? It's so good now, I like the girl next to her. It's a good opportunity for you two to rekindle your past relationship. Fuck you. Wow. When these words came out, Chen Pai, who was standing behind, finally couldn't bear it anymore. He smashed the bottle in his hand on Bai Shouqing's head, and glass shards immediately poured out. Seeing that he had already started the next step of his combo, Sun Ye quickly shouted, No. Chen Pai gasped and put away his murderous intent. He gritted his teeth and said, You fat bastard, why are you pretending to be so great in front of me? When I was learning how to chop people, you were still playing with piss and mud. If you dare to disrespect my sister-in-law again, I will send you to see Jesus. Did you hear that? As soon as Chen Pai opened his throat, it was as if the sound of thunder was struck by electricity. The whole room became quiet in an instant, and Bai Shouqin became more sober. Fuck you, fuck you. You dare to hit me. In Jinhai City, you dare. If I don't take revenge. Ding ling ling. Maybe because he was numbed by alcohol, Bai Shouqin didn't feel any pain after drinking the bottle of wine. Before he could finish his harsh words, his cell phone suddenly rang. Xu Wenping turned his head and glanced at Su Yurou's smiling face, and couldn't help but smile. After Sun Ya stood up, he pulled Chen Pai to sit down and said, "API, sit down. You're still so impulsive. You fucking want to sit? Are you fucking worthy of sitting on my chair?" Seeing that Chen Pai and Xu Wenping were still so arrogant, Bai Shouqin couldn't hold back his anger and was ready to throw them back with a chair. Before he could make a move, Su Yurou smiled and said, "Brother Bai, before you hit someone, do you want to check who is calling?" Bai Shouqin, who was speaking classical Chinese, was slightly startled. Bai Shouqin fumbled for his phone, took it out and looked at it. He sobered up immediately. His eyes changed drastically, and he quickly picked up the phone. He immediately bent his waist and answered incoherently, "Assistant Xiao Wang, why did you suddenly call me?" After all, Bai Shouqin was already drunk, and he couldn't move the phone around, so he pressed the speakerphone button. "Bai Shouqin. Damn it, do you want to see who is sitting opposite you? That's our Su group, President Su. You're still talking about cooperation with us. What the hell are you talking about? The Su group will never cooperate with you in this life, do you understand? Apologize to President Su right now. Otherwise, I will make sure that Bai Shouqin will be doomed to eternal damnation." Although it was also a woman's voice, it was so angry that it sounded like an explosion. Bai Shouqin, who had his head covered, took a long time to react. The phone in his hand fell to the ground. He turned around and scanned the people present, saying, Who among you has the surname Su? Who is President Su?" With just a few words, Bai Shouqin's momentum suffered a Waterloo. Su Yurou still had a faint smile on her face and said, "Boss Bai, if you are looking for someone who happens to be in the cosmetics business and has the last name Su, then it should be me. Don't you have in-depth cooperation with the Su group? I think this is the first time I meet you." Su Yurou's expression was calm. But at this moment, everyone saw ridicule on this face, and embarrassment on Bai Shouqin's face, which looked like he had eaten pig liver. He. Is it such a coincidence? Mr. Bai. It turns out that the powerful cooperation unit you were talking about is actually my sister-in-law. Seeing Bai Shouqin confused, Chen Pai immediately became vicious. Bai Shouqin's mouth twitched, with a smile uglier than crying on his face, and he bent over and said, "Boss Su. I think there must be some misunderstanding between us. I apologize. Har. We are not children, so let's not say angry words. Let's drink together. Business is business, but aren't we having a party today?" Chapter 53 Belated Fear. If Mr. Bai is sober now, I will toast you all on behalf of my husband. You and my husband are classmates, but this is the first time we meet. We can be considered friends, and we have to thank Mr. Bai for his warm hospitality. Killing with a soft knife never draws blood. Bai Shouqin was shaking violently all over, but when he saw Su Yurou raising her wine glass, all he wanted to say to admit his mistake and apologize was stuck in his throat. Cooperate? What a cooperation! You are not children anymore, can you just apologize and let it go? Su Yurou meant, just save your breath, just take it if I give you the chance. Su Yurou took control of the home court. Xu Wenping picked up a glass of wine and looked at the classmates present. He looked much happier than if he had done something himself. It is so comfortable to have a virtuous wife at home. After this glass of wine, there was no longer any meaning in the party. One classmate suggested ending the party at an opportune moment, and everyone immediately started to think about leaving. Naturally, they felt too embarrassed to come up again at this moment and try to establish a relationship with Xu Wenping, who they did not agree with at the beginning. But some people couldn't help but talk in low voices. Is this Xu Wenping hooking up with a rich lady? Yes, I saw him hiding there the whole time, without saying a word. But, that Mr. Su is amazing. That's what I saw. It's just a pity that Mr. Bai suffered a great loss and didn't even realize it. Although the crowd was bustling, the waiter who received the call also came up. As soon as he pushed the door open and entered the room, Xu Wenping's expression changed slightly. Gao Cheng, dressed in a suit and tie, came to Xu Wenping with an order taker in his hand and said with a smile, "Hello, President Xu." "Hello, Madam Su. Why are you here?" Xu Wenping smiled bitterly. Since Gao Cheng is here, he must have known everything that happened in the box just now, otherwise he would not have come in and asked Xu Wenping directly. Seeing this, everyone looked surprised. Because at this moment Gao Cheng was wearing a work badge, which he had obviously just taken off from the general manager of the Yangjiang Hotel and hung on his chest. Depend on. What a big deal it is for the general manager to come out and settle the bill in person. Gao Cheng smiled and said, "You just arranged for me to come and pick up the car. I knew you were having dinner here, and I was afraid that your men might not understand things, so I waited outside the door in person." Bai Shouqing seemed to have thought of something, his face turned pale and blue, and at this moment, the students who were whispering below finally shut up. Seeing Gao Cheng's words, Xu Wenping stopped hiding his feelings and smiled softly, pointing at Bai Shouqing and said, "Boss Bai is treating us today, so you don't have to consider my face." "Okay, Mr. Xu." Gao Cheng smiled and nodded, then placed the order dispenser in his hand in front of Bai Shouqing. Bai Shouqing had already accepted it at this moment and finally realized that Xu Wenping was playing the pig to eat the tiger. He lowered his head and handed over the bank card as if he was chewing Coptis chinensis. Ding! Insufficient balance. The deliberately amplified voices sounded like a series of taunts, and everyone's faces changed slightly. Bai Shouqing took the ordering device in surprise, and when he saw the price on it, he immediately waved his hand and smashed the ordering device, angrily saying, "Are you killing pigs? What kind of meal cost me 300,000 yuan?" Gao Cheng had a fake smile on his face, but the next moment, the door of the box opened and 4 or 5 sturdy and resolute security guards walked in with batons in their hands. Gao Cheng smiled softly and said, "Sir, you can take a look at the prices above. The dishes you ordered are 54,800, the drinks were 22,900, and then 3 boxes of wine were added, which are the 98 collection edition Mao Tai, totaling 180,000. The tableware used was 6,800. I gave you a discount for the hotel toilet and a chair you just smashed. Oh, by the way, the ordering machine you just smashed is a gold-plated custom version, so now you have to pay 350,000. Hiss. Everyone gasped. Bai Shouqing's anger subsided immediately after seeing the sturdy and resolute security guards. He frowned and prepared to take out his card. He swiped 3 cards in a row, and paid a total of a little over 300,000. Bai Shouqing's forehead was covered with sweat and he was already looking for his credit card. When he was about to take out the 4th card, Xu Wenping waved his hand and said, "That's it. It's very troublesome. Don't waste time." "Yes, Mr. Xu." Gao Cheng nodded slightly. Seeing Xu Wenping standing up, the security guard immediately made way for him. However, at this moment, Bai Shouqing shouted in a trembling voice, "Wait!" Seeing the sharp eyes of the security guards, Bai Shouqing felt that he had no tears left even if he cried. He gritted his teeth and said, "Can you please let me know who has fallen into my hands?" "Mr. Xu, what are your origins?" Xu Wenping smiled slightly, shook his head and walked out holding the thermos cup. Bai Shouqing made a fool of himself. Arguing with such a person would really lower one's status. How could he respond? It was not until Xu Wenping and the other 2 left that Gao Cheng stared at Bai Shouqing coldly and said, "Want to ask who our President Xu is?" "Har har. I just heard you say when I was listening outside the door that you often drink with the chairman of the Dahao group." "I often drink, and I still don't know you." Bai Shouqing trembled all over and his face suddenly turned pale. Looking at the high walls and the calm expressions of the security guards, Bai Shouqing began to stop worrying about his financial losses. He was a little worried about his life and future. At this point, many students suddenly realized. One of them murmured, "What do you mean by not recognizing a great man with eyes? I just thought the thermos was pretty good looking, guess what? More than 80,000 for 1 cup." What happened inside did not cause any ripples in Xu Wenping's heart. As they walked down the stairs, Chen Pai said excitedly, "Brother Ping, I find you are so handsome now. How much money do you have now?" Xu Wenping smiled and said, "Not a few." Chen Pai's eyes lit up and he said, "You must help me, little brother. I can barely afford to eat." Xu Wenping smiled gently. As soon as they got in the car, Chen Pai got into the driver's seat of the BMW excitedly and said, "Let me do it, let me do it. Hey. I just saw my sister-in-law pouring some water into her stomach. Brother Ping, sister-in-law, let's go out and have a drink by ourselves. I haven't had enough fun yet." Xu Wenping nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Don't attend such rubbish gatherings in the future. None of the students who were ambitious in the past came today." Chen Pai sighed and said, "Isn't it? Alas. If you are really powerful, who would do such a despicable thing? If I had known that your brother Ping is so powerful, why would I have called you over? Har 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 har, my little API is going to be rich too." Chapter 54 Mother's Expectations. After returning to the city and sitting for a while, Chen Pai started to pour wine. If Su Yurou was pretending to drink, Chen Pai was really drinking. Since he was a child, he seemed to have no sensitivity to alcohol and could hardly get drunk. The two talked about the old days and were moved from time to time. Su Yurou patiently poured wine for them, and the two brothers really enjoyed themselves drinking. "API, tell me, what do you want to do now? Do you want to be a leader, or something? I will definitely help you. Deha Group, how about you go in and become their vice president? Just muddle through, you'll get paid." Xu Wenping is also very open-hearted when it comes to tangerine peel. Chen Pai did not hide his true feelings either, and immediately shook his head and said, "Brother, give me some money, I want to open a large cargo company. Actually, I am alone, you know, one person feeds their whole family, so I can find any odd job. I have hundreds of brothers under my command. They were all idle people in society. They were scattered like stars in the sky but gathered together like a fire. They were all hanging out in various places. When they heard that I was coming out, they all rushed to join me. I can't leave them without even a place to stay, can I? Wharf transportation is my job. There are few people in Jinhai City who don't give me face. If you can get a few million, I can run the business accordingly. A Pai is definitely not a useless person. At the age of only 20, he was able to get out of prison 3 years later after killing someone. He was very cunning and ruthless. For a long time, Xu Wenping thought that he could not catch up with Chen Pai in terms of future. Not only has this guy been an expert in martial arts since he was young, he can learn any moves quickly, but he is also a great driver. He took the driving test at the age of 17 and a half, and he has indeed driven a large truck with an A license. It's all talent. No problem. I'll give you some more money, 20 million first. Just operate it well, and it doesn't matter if you fail. We have the capital to start over now. If the scale and trend are normal in the future, I'll add another 100 million. For Xu Wenping now, hundreds of millions are not really of any value, they are just a number. Of course, if it were an ordinary person, Xu Wenping would not hand over such a large sum of money to him, but he trusted Chen Pai. Xu Wenping still remembers the person who took the knife for him. They drank until late at night. After Xu Wenping sent Chen Pai home, he and Su Yurou returned to their community. Seeing that it was getting late, Xu Wenping tiptoed to open the door, and he and Su Yurou sneaked in carefully. I don't know if my mother was waiting or if it was just a coincidence, but the two of them walked to the center of the living room, the lights came on, and my mother yawned and said in a slightly strange tone, "Why are you two sneaking around? I thought you were a mouse." He, Mom. When he arrived in front of his mother, despite Xu Wenping's status, he still had to be ashamed, lower his head, and chuckle. My mother rolled her eyes, pointed behind them, and said, "You two can just stay in that bedroom for the night. You've washed the sheets and quilts in your own bedroom, and they are getting too dirty every day. If I don't go in, I don't know how Yurou will sleep." Having said that, Xu Wenping was stunned when he saw the hint in his mother's eyes. Su Yurou was not incapable of observing people's expressions. Seeing this, her face could not help but blush. The three of them looked at each other awkwardly for a moment. Instead, Su Yurou quickly took Xu Wenping's hand, turned around and pushed the door open, shouting, "Thank you, Auntie." As soon as the two entered the room, Xu Wenping was stunned for a moment. The bright red bed sheets and quilt covers, and several balloons hanging on the wall, created a romantic atmosphere. It seems that it can't be described as romantic. Su Yurou blushed at the same time. Just take a shower and go to bed. This room is the master bedroom, so it has an independent bathroom. Su Yurou began to wash her face and take care of her skin. Xu Wenping had just laid down on the bed when he felt a sharp pain in his waist. He could not help but be speechless again. How anxious is my mother? Is she decorating the bridal chamber in advance? Pajamas were also prepared. After Su Yurou changed, she sat down on the edge of the bed. Her expression changed slightly. Xu Wenping immediately laughed awkwardly and said, "Hee, a little bit, but it's okay in the middle." In this situation, there was nothing that the two of them didn't understand. Although Su Yurou blushed, she squeezed a little to the middle and deliberately raised her head to make a little gap, allowing Xu Wenping's strong arms to hug him. When their bodies touched, a strange fragrance wafted around Xu Wenping's nose. Coupled with the influence of alcohol, Xu Wenping immediately felt his body extremely hot and he wanted to be closer to Su Yurou even more. However, because of nervousness, Xu Wenping's movements were not too big. The night light was pitch black, with only the night sky shining through the curtains. So Xu Wenping was already having wild thoughts, and Su Yurou was not necessarily able to remain calm. She felt Xu Wenping's outstretched hand, feeling it a little clumsy. She gritted her teeth and deliberately leaned closer to his hand. Its body is soft to begin with, and when it sways, it looks more like a snake coiling around the body. When their eyes met, warmth suddenly blossomed. Xu Wenping moved forward and touched Su Yurou this time. Their lips intertwined and Su Yurou made babbling sounds without even caring about herself. This was like dry wood and flaming fire, which was ignited at once. As Xu Wenping caressed him, his technique became more skillful. Seeing Xu Wenping about to unbutton his pajamas, Su Yurou suddenly trembled, put her jade hand on his chest, looked at Xu Wenping nervously, then glanced at the door, and said, "What's that noise?" Xu Wenping was getting anxious at this time. He turned around and tried to suppress it immediately, saying, "What's the matter? Let's do our thing." "Oh, look. The soundproofing of this room seems to be very poor." Xu Wenping was quite helpless and thought that Su Yurou was talking nonsense. After she covered herself with the quilt, Xu Wenping walked up to her and directly opened the bedroom door. You wouldn't know until you pull the door open. As soon as the door was opened, the two old men at the door slipped and almost fell in. They quickly steadied their steps and stepped back. Xu Wenping turned around and saw that Su Yurou wasn't paying attention, so he rushed out and gently closed the door. Their eyes met, and Xu Wenping said helplessly, "Mom and Dad, what are you doing? What are you doing out here, kid?" Before Xu Wenping could get angry, his mother said angrily, "Why don't you give your mother a grandson? Why are you coming out to see me? What's so good about your father and I? Go inside and see your wife." Xu Wenping's face turned pale and blue. He was pushed into their house by his mother. After the door was closed, Su Yurou asked curiously, "Is there something?" Xu Wenping hurriedly shook his head and said, No. But now, the anger in Xu Wenping's heart was mostly extinguished, and he lay quietly on the bed. Su Yurou gently wrapped her arms around him and whispered in Xu Wenping's ear, "Don't worry. Wenping. I'm not feeling well today. The soundproofing is so poor, if your parents hear me, wouldn't I be so embarrassed?" Chapter 55, Green Sea Fairyland. It's too bad. No words were spoken that night. The next morning, Xu Wenping and Su Yurou got up, feeling refreshed. But when they pushed the door open, they saw their parents snuggling on the sofa, both with dark circles under their eyes. Hearing the footsteps, the mother suddenly turned over and said with an expectant smile, "Are you two awake? Mom will make breakfast for you. Don't bother, Mom. Just go down and have a bite. Look at what you and my dad have done. Har har. I did manage to stay up all night. I didn't hear any noise." The mother's voice mumbled, and neither Su Yurou nor Xu Wenping heard it. But when they turned around, the mother smiled and waved her hand, saying, Nothing. Xu Wenping and Su Yurou looked at each other and both saw the strange smile hidden in each other's eyes. "Dad, Mom, you two should pack up. We'll go around the villa with you later." Xu Wenping stopped dwelling on the previous topic and spoke after a moment's thought. "Since the reward has been received, it would be a waste if I don't stay there. There will never be such an embarrassment in the villa due to poor sound insulation, right?" Dad was delighted when he heard this, but Mom frowned and said, "Why don't we just not go there? People who live here. Come on." "Mom, I don't care where you live, but you can't not even know where your son and daughter-in-law live, right?" As soon as Xu Wenping finished speaking, his father patted his thigh and said, "You are right, my dear. Even if we can't live there, we should at least know where our son lives, right? You old thing, why are you so petty? The mother rolled her eyes and said, I don't know you yet. Don't you just want to live in your son's villa? Why did I marry you in this life? Got it, got it. Let's clean up and get over it. He. Dad was smiling, but the mother inside was still nagging. Can't you be less petty? Wenping said it was a villa, but even so, a villa nowadays can't accommodate many people. Didn't you realize it last night? We are a distraction to others. You old man don't understand. My mother was nagging, but my father said nothing. He just smiled and coaxed me along. The atmosphere was not weird at all, but seemed more intimate. Su Wenping and Su Yurou were still wearing the same outfit as last night. His father had no intention of changing out of his old Zhongshan suit. He just carried a bag containing his chessboard, chess manuals, teapot and tea leaves. For his father, that was enough for moving. The mother said that she would not stay, but she still put some daily necessities in her bag. She was afraid that if she went there, she might be kept for 2 days and would trouble the child with daily necessities. Amidst the trivialities, there is the warmth of a family. This is Su Wenping's first time going there too. After turning on the navigation, the car gradually moved away from the city. As the temperature rose slightly, they realized that they had reached the coastal road. But when they reached the top of the towering mountains and the altitude increased, the natural air conditioning made the air no longer stuffy, but instead very refreshing. Hey, I've been up this mountain once. When we were halfway along the way, there were beautiful scenery along the way, but no houses were in sight. My father suddenly slapped his thigh and said, I think I was 40 years old that year. There was a villa area up here, and my old boss lived there at the time. Really? Although my father lived a mediocre life, he was old enough to be knowledgeable and experienced, and he always had more knowledge than Su Wenping. When the car drove up the mountain and then down the mountain, we finally saw a row of single-family villas. There were indeed a few people taking a walk, and a few luxury cars passed by slowly. The villas were relatively far apart, like a large park within a small park. It seems that even the villas here are divided into different grades. Those on the mountain have the same layout, a perfect combination of classic and modern styles. At the mountainside, the appearances of the villas are different. They all have certain details, are located in different places, and have their own styles. By the time we arrived at Villa number 1 where Su Wenping was, we were already at the foot of the mountainside. I clicked on the smart butler service on my mobile phone, and it seemed that I could receive the message just by clicking on it. In front of the house is a big red gate with 2 doors. 200 or 300 meters later is Villa number 2, which is opposite to the other house. In front of the gate grows a ginkgo tree that is so big that 3 people can hug it. The whole street looks deep and elegant. When the car stopped, the red door was already open. In front of the stone screen is an open corridor. At this moment, in the middle of the corridor, a short-haired girl in uniform stands with her hands crossed, her posture upright and her demeanor calm. Talking about the woman's appearance, it was a bit strange. She had an absolutely amazing face, like someone from Dalong country, but she had a pair of deep blue eyes and her hair was light yellow, which was very exotic. Seeing this woman, Su Yurou nervously pulled Su Wenping's arm tightly. Unlike the vulgar fan like Sun Ya, Su Yurou felt a little wary when she saw such a beautiful woman in the room, even though she was obviously a maid. In addition to this woman, there were several people standing on the left and right. Some were dressed in servants' uniforms, some were dressed in chefs' uniforms, and some were dressed simply and looked like cleaning ladies. However, they all smiled neither humbly nor arrogantly, and did not have any humiliating expressions because of their professions. Welcome home, master. The housekeeper spoke crisply, with a hint of gentleness and softness in her pure broadcasting voice, coupled with her kind smile. Su Wenping couldn't help but glance at her and nodded gently. The housekeeper gave a slight signal, and a doorman came over to take their car keys. The housekeeper led the way and said softly, Hello, Mr. Shu, I am your personal housekeeper, Nami. I am from the Lighthouse country. I graduated from the Chiu Junior Etiquette School in the United States. I have a doctorate in etiquette and a master's degree in architectural arts. I am also the 36th generation outer sect descendant of the Xiangshan gang of the Dalong country's architectural team. In addition, I am also a first-class chef, a practicing physician, and a luxury goods appraiser. I hope that my skills can bring useful services to the master. Damn. This long list of introductions even made Su Yurou, who was standing next to him, slightly stunned. Her father scratched his head and said, Amazing. This little girl is amazing. Nami turned around and smiled gently at her father, but immediately focused all her attention on Su Wenping. Apart from being absolutely respectful to Su Wenping, she did not even bow to anyone else. Su Wenping nodded gently and said, "Okay. Then take me, my parents and my wife to visit my new home." "Yes, sir." Nami smiled deeply and nodded, then she heard Su Wenping say, "By the way, I have to remind you that in our great dragon country, the most important skill for a housekeeper is to read people's expressions and know the ways of the world. Nami, you must distinguish between the primary and the secondary." Having said that, Su Wenping stepped back quietly, letting his parents stand in front. Chapter 56 Neighbors. Nami's expression was pale and uncertain. She turned her head to take a look. Su Wenping's father just smiled warmly, then turned his head and glared at Su Wenping, saying, "You kid, you're holding it up to a little girl. It's okay, it's okay. Nami, right? How do you say it? Since we live together, we are all family. We are not so stingy with diplomas." Nami nodded fearfully. To be honest, this show of power still surprised her. Only then did she realize that she was once again a steward of the great dragon kingdom. Unlike in the West, the order of hierarchy here is itself a very profound subject. The father was feeling proud when his mother kicked him on the butt. He gritted his teeth and said, "Go on your way, old man. You like chatting with little girls so much, don't you?" "No, no, no. No. Hey. We are out and about, please give me some face. This is your son's home, not your home, right?" Still saving face. When a few people came into their house laughing and joking, Nami found that the things she had prepared didn't seem to be of much use, and an honest smile immediately appeared on her face. She changed her mind very quickly and said, "Uncle and aunt, our villa, including the beach and sea area below, is nearly 5,000 square meters. There are 3 small courtyards in the villa park. You 2 old people can live in one, and the master and mistress can live in another. When you have grandchildren, the area will be very large. The outer area is where our servants live. Look, there is a pavilion with a sea view. You can read a book and drink tea, or sit next to it and fish. It's very convenient." After all, he is a student of etiquette, and his expression changes faster than turning the pages of a book. "Oh my, this place is really big. My dear, you are still worried that it won't be big enough. Not to mention adding the 2 of us, even if we move in from our old neighborhood and squeeze in, it will be big enough. How much does this cost?" As her father asked, Nami and Su Wenping's eyes met for a moment. The former understood and smiled. "In fact, the value is average, but the quota is very important. Mr. Shu must have connections to buy villa number 1. You 2 should just enjoy it. Look, this is an entertainment area. We usually meet up with some old friends to play chess or mahjong. This is the intelligent control area. As long as you shout, the robot will find the chess manual for you." Nami also saw what her father was holding. This catered to her taste, and her father's eyes immediately lit up. He quickly moved over. The small door of the entertainment room connected to the wind and rain corridor in the yard. Her father went in to open the box, looked at the chess pieces placed next to it, and immediately said excitedly, "Oh, my dear. Ivory goods, good stuff. Isn't this a very comfortable shot? General. Oh, that feels great." The 3 courtyards are connected by courtyards and corridors and are quite close to each other because it is a down-to-earth ancient-style building. There is a building in the front, but the small courtyards are all bungalows. Everyone walked into the main courtyard in the middle. Su Wenping kept observing his mother and was relieved to see that she seemed somewhat satisfied. Signaling Nami not to introduce them for the time being, they walked to the living room at the first entrance to the courtyard. After sitting down, Nami went downstairs to make tea. Su Wenping looked at his mother, and then looked at his father who was entertaining himself and having a lot of fun in the entertainment room over there. "Mom, how is it, are you satisfied?" "Not satisfied." Su Wenping had asked with confidence, but his mother's answer made him pause for a moment. She looked at him sharply and said, "You can fool that old man, but you can't fool me. Your father said that his leader lives in this neighborhood. I just observed that your location should be one of the best." Yeah, right." The mother approached Su Wenping worriedly and said, "Wenping, I know you have always had great ambitions. If you hadn't achieved anything, you wouldn't have shown it to your parents. I've decided to live with you, but if you encounter any difficulties outside, don't handle it by yourself. Seeing the worry in his mother's eyes, Su Wenping was deeply moved, but then he said, "Don't worry, Mom, I'm fine." Su Yurou didn't say much, but she had already examined the entire residence. She remained calm about the exquisiteness of the building, but there was always a hint of vigilance when she looked at Nami. Just at this moment, an old voice suddenly sounded outside. "Is anyone in the house? Who is their host?" Walking from outside the house, a kind-looking, slightly thin, hunched old man wearing loose clothes, with his hands behind his back, looked at me with a smile, and shouted softly. Behind him followed a sturdy bodyguard, who was obviously a skilled person. As soon as Su Wenping raised his eyebrows, Nami came over and whispered, "That's Mr. Li who lives across from us. He used to be a big leader in the province. Now he's retired and recuperating. Because his children are usually busy, he likes to take a walk and visit his friends. Maybe the door of the villa was open today, so the old man came to visit." Su Wenping suddenly realized. Unlike their generation of young people, the older generation still attaches great importance to neighborhood relations. Su Wenping hurried to greet them. After all, visitors are guests. However, at this moment, my father just walked out of the entertainment room, still reluctant to leave. Naturally, he heard the old man's shouting and came over to take a closer look wearing his glasses. Suddenly he said in surprise, old leader. You are. This thin old man is at least 70 years old, and in his eyes, Su Wenping's father is just a boy. But all I saw was Su Wenping's father patting his thigh, then pointing at the bodyguard behind him and saying, "Old leader, how can you be so forgetful? I was just like this kid back then, following you around like a madman, serving you tea and water." The old leader wiped his eyes, took a closer look, and looked at Su Wenping's father's legs. He suddenly became excited. "You are Xianyan. Shu Xinian, right? I remember now. You were impulsive. You broke your legs to protect me. For this, I blamed myself for a long time. Oh. How could I encounter this? Har, old leader. What a coincidence. Oh, in the blink of an eye I have become an old man." At this time, Su Wenping also came up, and his father quickly pulled Su Wenping to introduce him. "This is my son. The villa is his. The child is filial and took us here to take care of us in our old age. If I hadn't given birth to a good son, I, old Shu, would never have been able to live in the same community with you in this life." Har. The old man laughed loudly and said, "As the saying goes, the younger generation pushes the older generation forward. We are all old. Okay, there is chess, right? Let's play a couple of games. That's just what I want." Chapter 57 Sudden Illness. Seeing the two old men happily playing chess, Su Wenping couldn't help but smile and stopped disturbing them. He was worried that his parents would get bored after moving in, but now his father has found a chess friend right after he arrived, and he is also his former leader. Destiny is sometimes so wonderful. Shu Wen walked slowly back to their hall again, thought for a moment, took out his cell phone and called Chen Pai. "API. Brother Ping. How is it? Did you receive the money? Are you busy? I need your help with something." Su Wenping was being polite, so Chen Pai on the other side of the room kept saying no. Su Wenping then said slowly, "It's like this. I'll send you a location, and it's just right for you to do your first business and move our family to a new place." "Moving? Har. Okay, don't worry, brother Long. I've already signed the contract. How many trucks do you need?" Hearing the sound of Chen Pai sharpening his knife to kill pigs and sheep, Su Wenping smiled bitterly and said, "A wholala will do. Just go to the one in our old neighborhood and help my parents get their daily necessities over. It's just, but you can also add a few pieces of furniture. Anyway, come over and talk." "Okay." After hanging up the phone, Su Wenping walked forward with a smile. At this time, his mother and Su Yurou had just walked around several rooms and expressed their satisfaction. "How about it, Mom? Yurou, is there anything else that needs to be bought for the house? If there is anything you are not satisfied with, just tell Nami and ask her to change it." My mother immediately smiled and said, that's great. Oh. Entering the house is like entering a scenic spot. Everything I see is priceless. I'm a little reluctant to sit down." Har. Xu Wenping laughed out loud. Su Yurou didn't express any opinion. Although she was somewhat interested when she first came in, she had now completely calmed down. Even if she wasn't at the state of not being stuck in things, at least this level of living conditions wouldn't surprise Su Yurou too much. Just as he was smiling, Su Yurou's cell phone rang. He answered it for a moment and then his face showed joy. After nodding, he did not speak until Nami took her mother to familiarize herself with her courtyard. Su Yurou leaned over to Xu Wenping's ear and said, "Wenping, I have to go back to the company." "Are so busy." Xu Wenping had a strange expression on his face, but Su Yurou said with a bit of joy, "The research team said that the results of the communication with the laboratory have come out. There is a major leader over there who is very interested in our research results. I'm afraid he will be here soon." Interested in leadership. Xu Wenping's expression brightened upon hearing this, and then he said with a smile, "Okay, since you already know the way, let's go. I'll take you to the company first." "I'll go by myself, you stay with your parents." "Let's go." Xu Wenping smiled and took Su Yurou out. Although the current villa was the most exquisitely decorated, it was still a move, and even some trivial matters might not be dealt with in a day or two. Besides, they drove a car when they came up, so it would be impossible to get a taxi here. As he was going downstairs, Xu Wenping called Chen Pai on their way and asked him to wait at the gate of the community. He could go downstairs with the key and move his things directly. After sending Su Yurou back to the company, Xu Wenping rushed to his own community, but on their way, his eyes were attracted by a street vendor. The area near their community is a place where many elderly people occasionally interact with each other, so there are mobile antique stalls. Xu Wenping was usually not interested in this, so he didn't pay much attention to it. But this time when he passed by, he became interested in a small wooden box of an old man. Xu Wenping stopped the car and walked straight towards the small wooden box. The wooden box was marked with the Luoshu River map, but there was also a portrait drawn on it, which looked extremely delicate. When Xu Wenping opened the wooden box, he saw that it had a 3-layer sliding frame and was also a mechanical object. All the rotating structures are made of wood, which can be considered delicate and flexible. However, this wooden box is not noteworthy, as it actually contains a complete set of gold needles. "How much?" "Oh, little friend, you have finally seen the right thing this time. Let me tell you, according to legend, this box was made by Master Luban, and the golden needles inside were designed by the elder brother of the famous Dr. Bien Q and forged by Oyu Yezi himself." "Little friend, have you heard of this?" Bien Q once said that his medical skills were the worst among his brothers, so he was famous throughout the world. His second brother treated the disease before it broke out, and his eldest brother treated the disease before it broke out. He treated the disease after it broke out. This is the realm. Listening to the old man chattering on and on, the corner of Xu Wenping's mouth twitched. If nothing else, he could make some money by telling crosstalk with this mouth, so why use it to cheat people? "How much?" Xu Wenping interrupted. 6,480. "If you think this price. 648. Make a deal." Seeing the old man's triumphant smile, Xu Wenping's expression couldn't help but pause slightly. As he paid and picked up the wooden box, he couldn't help but doubt whether he would buy it even if he said it was 64.80 yuan. This old man, doesn't he know what's good? The golden needles in the wooden box are not really made of gold, but an extremely rare refined purple gold. Of course, this thing is not common in the world, so its value is not high, it is just very rare. Xu Wenping was quite happy to have found a bargain. When he arrived at the gate of the community, Chenpi was already waiting downstairs. Today, Chen Pai had his hair tied into a small braid and was wearing a well-fitting suit. When he saw Xu Wenping coming over, his eyes lit up immediately and he shouted to his subordinates who were wearing blue-gray uniforms, "Call me Brother Ping." "Hello, Brother Ping." Although this group of guys are wearing the same uniform as those in the repair shop, they all have a nonchalant vibe to them. Everyone shouted like thunder. Xu Wenping was afraid of startling the neighbors, so he hurriedly said, all right, stop doing this nonsense, go up and move the things." "I say, you are too cunning, aren't you? You even blame your old leader." "The horse was clearly here just now, how could it fly to this place?" The atmosphere was harmonious at the beginning, but at this moment, the two old men in front of the chessboard were glaring at each other. Xu Xinyan gritted his teeth and said, "Surely, old leader, how could I move a chess piece without permission? You have to admit your defeat." Besides, even if my 2 chariots are wrong, they are still a sure kill. What does it have to do with the knights? The bodyguard standing behind didn't dare to speak. At this moment, my mother also came over and gritted her teeth and said, "Are you playing bad chess again, old man?" Mr. Lee was slightly stunned, and immediately laughed coldly. "That's what I mean. Do you really think that I can see it wrong with my old eyesight?" Forehead. As they were talking, Mr. Lee suddenly rolled his eyes and a mouthful of white foam came out of his mouth. Chapter 58, Thunder and Wind. Old man. Old leader. Mr. Lee. Everyone's faces changed immediately. Xu Xinian was also surprised. He hurried over and helped the old leader to sit down. The bodyguard at this time also reacted, took out a medicine bottle from his hand, and hurriedly fed the medicine to Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee took the medicine tremblingly. After swallowing a pill, he gasped heavily and seemed to have recovered a little. He waved his hand and said, "It's okay. It's an old problem. You kid, if you don't make me angry, how can I be so excited? Oh my, this, oh, I'm sorry, old leader, I was wrong." Xu Xinian next to him had no choice but to apologize. If his wife had not just called him out on his mistake, Xu Xinian would never have admitted it. His chess level was at most good enough to get a medal in the amateur group. Once he entered the professional group, he would definitely lose. He liked to play the game, but in the community, he was notorious for his bad chess skills. Even if he cannot win, he will never admit defeat. Even if he has to cheat, he will make sure the game is lost. Therefore, Xu Xinian has a famous nickname among the old men who play chess in the community, which is Xu Bubai. You can draw or lose the game, but you must never lose. In the old man's heart, the honorary title of Xu Bubai has become an obsession, and he must stick to it even when facing his old leader. Facing Lao Shu's chess style, the old leader Li Lao could only sigh slightly, panting, and said to the bodyguard, "Forget it. Help me go back. Go back." Poof. Mr. Lee had just stood up, and before he could be helped by his bodyguards, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face began to distort and he looked extremely painful. He sat down on the chair and began to shiver. Old man. Just when the situation had just improved, Mr. Lee's illness relapsed. The bodyguard didn't dare to give him medicine and immediately took out his phone to make a call. "Doctor, yes, right, in the next yard. Please come quickly, the old man's illness seems to be very serious this time." Seeing Xu Xinian and his companions trying to help the old man lie down, the bodyguard immediately stopped them and said, "No need, both of you. Thank you for your kindness. The doctor will be here soon." At this moment, Nami at the back just raised her eyebrows slightly, with waves in her eyes. After frowning slightly, she immediately took a step forward and said softly, "Mr. Bodyguard, if my guess is correct, Mr. Lee has an acute myocardial infarction, right?" The bodyguard was slightly stunned. Nami immediately reached into her pocket and took out her medical license from among several certificates. She said slowly, "Mr. Xu, there are a lot of medical equipment at home. I happen to be a practicing physician in internal medicine. Mr. Lee must get emergency treatment in time. By the time your doctor arrives, I'm afraid it will be too late." Seeing Nami's ID, the bodyguard's expression flickered and he began to panic. At this time, Xu Xinian also stepped forward and grabbed the bodyguard, saying, "You kid, are you just being a bodyguard for your old leader? You don't trust the doctor, do you trust yourself? Hurry. At this time, Nami calmly took out the walkie-talkie in her hand, and a moment later, someone came running over pushing a wheelchair. The Villar's own medical room is not simple. It is small but fully equipped with simple medical equipment and emergency medicines. When he was pushed in, Mr. Lee was already in a trance, with only a faint breath. When he was connected to a heart rate machine, it was obvious that his heart rate was extremely unstable and he was at the gate of death. Nami also looked serious and said immediately, "I need to prepare the electrotherapy right away. As the saying goes, I'm not afraid of the doctor laughing, I'm afraid of the doctor's face frowning." Seeing Nami's expression, the bodyguard was a little panicked. Nami was being treated inside. After the bodyguard came out, he made several phone calls in a row. Yes. Mr. Lee, the old man is in emergency condition. He is now in Villa number 1 opposite our house. An unknown practicing internal medicine doctor is giving him emergency treatment. The old man's personal doctor is on the way. Miss, the old man is in an unstable condition now. After making several calls in a row, the bodyguard's forehead was covered with cold sweat. He was of course nervous and notified all the bosses in advance. Otherwise, if something really happened to Mr. Lee, he would not be able to take the responsibility. When he hung up the phone and looked inside, his face turned even paler. Although Nami was still operating the medical equipment in her hands, her legs were trembling a little and beads of sweat were running down her forehead. "How is it, doctor?" asked the bodyguard. Nami turned her head and said, "The old man's condition is extremely dangerous. If I were qualified, I should issue a critical illness notice now. I suggest sending him directly to the hospital." "Fuck, you're a quack." The bodyguard's eyes immediately turned red and he roared angrily. At this moment, a doctor in a white coat came in the lead, followed by several capable male and female nurses and assistants, with various medicines in their hands. "Doctor, look at the old man first." The doctor also broke out in a cold sweat and looked extremely nervous. He walked forward and began to examine the old man. But just as Nami was about to step back, the doctor gritted his teeth imperceptibly and pinched Nami's arm. "Doctor, could you please tell me about the rescue process for the old man just now so that I can analyze the next treatment plan?" His smile looked gentle, not even nervous. Nami was slightly stunned. "Treatment? What's next?" Just at this moment, there was a sound of brakes outside, and leading the way was a stern-faced middle-aged man with slicked back hair, exuding the aura of a superior from the inside out. Behind him followed several assistants, and even a few soldiers came down to stand guard. After the middle-aged man walked in, he said in a steady voice, "Dr. Huang, how is my father's condition?" Dr. Huang paused for a moment, pushed his glasses, and said calmly, "I am discussing the emergency treatment with the emergency doctor. The old man's condition is not optimistic. Electric shock treatment is ongoing. The current condition." Seeing that Dr. Huang was unable to speak, the middle-aged man was shocked. He lowered his head and thought for a moment, then picked up his mobile phone and made a call. Even so, in this moment of great joy and great sorrow, the middle-aged man's tone remained calm, and he spoke gently, "Hello. Dean Luo, I'm Li Jingkang. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to come over to take care of my father's matter." "Yes, it's urgent. I'll ask Xiao Wang to pick you up, okay?" As Li Jingkang was talking, Xiao Wang over there had already realized what was going on. He hurried out of the door and drove to pick up the highly respected Dean Luo. Chapter 59 Evidence and Treatment. "Mr. Luo, please stop flattering me. Since you are here, why not give me some treatment?" Xu Wenping smiled gently. Seeing the hesitation on Old Man Luo's face, and then looking at Li Jingkang's trusting eyes, Old Man Luo was surprised and then slowly walked forward. As soon as he saw the look on Mr. Li's face, his expression changed immediately and he said, "Ridiculous. So, although electric shock therapy is not a good idea, it is still a method of treatment. Who would be so ridiculous as to use something like Black Yao to mobilize the old man's qi? An expert can tell whether something is good or not at one glance." Without even putting his hands on it, Mr. Luo made this decision. Li Jingkang raised his eyebrows, and Dr. Huang seemed to have grasped a life-saving straw and said, "Mr. City, listen, even Dr. Luo thinks so." However, at this moment, Dean Luo had already placed his hand on the old man's pulse, and then he shouted, "This is ridiculous. The old man has been taking black medicine in his medicine for a long time. I want to know who is Mr. Li's exclusive doctor. Don't you know the power of black medicine?" Dr. Huang looked like a clown and his face turned pale instantly. As soon as these words were spoken, the truth became clear without Xu Wenping having to say anything. Although adding black medicine to the old man's medicine for a long time stimulated his nerve senses, it also came at the cost of his life. Today's treatment can be blamed on Nami, but can long-term use be blamed? Could it be that Nami was deliberately murdering him? In Li Jingkang's home, the murderer of Li Jingkang's father was a stranger. This excuse cannot fool anyone. Dr. Huang began to tremble with fear. After walking on thin ice for a moment, he immediately knelt in front of Li Jingkang, and said with a pale face, "Municipal Lord, spare me, please spare me. I didn't mean it, I really didn't mean it. Once, the old man was really dying. I had no choice but to beg my teacher, so he told me this method. The old man was almost 80 years old, and he was at the age of death. Even if he was a god, he would Everyone who makes a mistake says that what he did was wrong. Li Jinkang's expression was gloomy, but deep inside he was terrifyingly calm. He just waved his hand gently and said, "Pull it down." R. No, no. Dr. Huang let out a scream like a pig being slaughtered, but before he could make a second scream, he was knocked unconscious by a palm strike from the bodyguard behind Li Jinkang and then dragged out. Of course, others don't know how to solve the problem specifically. Xu Wenping had a slight smile on his face, and he didn't notice at all that Nami behind him was staring at him, her sharp profile revealing a hint of attraction. Although she was a professional housekeeper, over the years, she had only let her servants take the blame at critical moments. How could she be so protective and say such cool words as, "I will not be humiliated," in front of her servants? Perhaps from learning etiquette to the top, Nami has already understood her life. She will either wander around and serve everywhere, or live in the home of a top wealthy person. The best ending is to live in fear and trepidation until she retires and takes over. I never thought there would be anyone to protect me. Just when everyone in the room was thinking about something else, Mr. Luo turned around with a dark face, a little aggrieved in his eyes, and said, "Mr. Li, this is too cruel. If it's just the small amount of medicine used before, I still have a way to deal with it. Just now, at most 5 minutes ago, half a bottle of black medicine was used." Seeing Li Jinkang's expression darken, Dean Luo quickly looked at Xu Wenping and said with a wry smile, "Young master. Saving a life is like building a 7-story pagoda." When Li Jinkang saw Dean Luo's expression, he naturally understood that Dean Luo had no way to deal with this trump card he had played. Turning his head to look at Xu Wenping, Li Jinkang forced a smile, but did not speak to Xu Wenping. Instead, he smiled at Nami and said, "Ms. Nami, I'm sorry for what happened just now. It was just an apology." Nami immediately got angry and waved her hands, saying, "It's okay, it's okay." With such a huge gap in their status, Nami actually felt a little uncomfortable with even a normal apology. Then, Li Jinkang looked at Xu Wenping and said with a smile, "Young master. I think what Dean Luo said is right. Saving a life is like building a 7-story pagoda. Besides, father and son are connected at this moment. My father is bedridden, and I am very sad. I hope young master can help." Xu Wenping raised his eyebrows slightly. In fact, since entering the room, Xu Wenping has had a good impression of Li Jinkang, or it can be said that there is a state of mutual respect. Having said that, especially after apologizing to Nami, Xu Wenping has decided to take action. Just as I was about to nod, a voice sounded in my mind again. "Ding, a request from a city lord would be impolite and stupid if I refuse. For the sake of the host's dignity, I will release the choice. First, refuse treatment. Offending this city lord will lead to a bumpy road in the future, and the system will give you consolation. Reward, a certificate for a good youth in the community. Second, agree to treat. Not only did you get a good opportunity for development, but you also showed your strong medical skills. Reward, chess entertainment subject package including chess, military chess, 5-in-a-row chess, Go, and other chess games at full level." Faced with this choice, Xu Wenping naturally had no reason to hesitate. After agreeing, Xu Wenping nodded to Li Jinkang and said with a smile, "Mr. Li, that's too serious. In fact, I was so angry just now because that Wang had no medical ethics. A great doctor should be sincere. There is no reason to ignore the sick and weak in front of him." Li Jinkang was delighted and said with a smile, "Young master, how sure are you?" Xu Wenping nodded gently and said, "The old man's condition is fine. But Mr. Li, please don't bother me. My surname is Xu, my name is Wenping, and you can call me Xiaoshu." Okay. Li Jinkang was truly happy at this moment and hurried to agree. Xu Wenping walked into the room and opened his box of gold needles, looking contented. After taking the patient's pulse, Xu Wenping couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and said to himself, "Everything is really ingenious. If I hadn't bought this pair of purple gold needles today, this disease would really be difficult to control." Li Jinkang originally wanted to look, but was pushed away by Dean Luo, who came to the front and was more enthusiastic than looking at the beauties. Xu Wenping inserted a few golden needles and a magical scene appeared. Faint black smoke flew out of the 7 orifices of the bedridden Mr. Li. The old and wrinkled pores seemed to come alive again, oozing out dirty sweat. A complete detox in just a few moments. Chapter 60. After the incident. Xu Wenping's operation was extremely light, and had nothing in common with the electric shock therapy and stimulating drug therapy he had just used. When the black smoke on his body had almost dissipated, people like Li Jinkang and Nami, who had been staring at the instrument, breathed a sigh of relief. But when they looked at Xu Wenping and Dean Luo, they found that they had never looked at the instrument. The old man suddenly groaned softly, and Xu Wenping turned around and said, "Get a bucket." Li Jinkang acted quickly. He really cared about his father and didn't mind his status at all at this moment. When he saw Xu Wenping lifting up Mr. Li, he immediately half knelt in front of his father, holding the bucket in his hands. The next moment, Xu Wenping struck with a fierce palm. The old man first vomited a mouthful of stagnant air. Then he vomited the food he had eaten today, plus the black medicine that had just been poured into his blood, into the bucket. It was white like porridge, but it smelled terrible. Li Jinkang remained calm, and instead saw his father's face improve. He excitedly asked, "Dad, how are you?" Huh, how come I have been holding my breath for so long?" "Hey, Kanga, why are you back?" Seeing his son, the old man frowned and said, "How many times have I told you that you can't return unless it is necessary, not during festivals or holidays? The affairs of the people of Jinhai are not more important than your father's life. Go back and solve the problem. If you don't manage Jinhai well, you will have to work overtime until you die suddenly. Get out." This scene surprised everyone. The old man was really angry, but Li Zhenghao, who had a gloomy face just now, showed a childlike smile, nodded and said, "Okay. Father, as long as you are well. I'll go back. Get lost, you useless brat." Li Zhenghao and his men fled in a panic. Everyone tried to persuade him to stay, and then Dean Luo smiled bitterly and said, "Mr. Li, please save your energy. You walked through the gates of hell and almost went to hell. Can't you let your son come and collect your body?" Elder Li was surprised. After hearing what Dean Luo said, he suddenly understood and nodded deeply. But then he smiled optimistically and said to Xu Wenping, "Then I really have to thank you, Xu boy. Your father saved me when he was young, and you are saving me now. I, an old man, seem to be born with something wrong. What about the fate of your Xu family?" Could it be the old man? "I helped you guys in my previous life, and you two are here to repay me in this life?" Har. Once he recovered his breath, the old man started joking around and his attitude was really good. Xu Wenping was actually pleased to see this. He smiled slowly as he took out the needle and said, "Maybe it's just as you said, Mr. Li. Anyway, I'll prescribe you a dose of medicine from now on. To be honest, apart from this heart blockage and the poison, Mr. Li, you are still very young. You only need to take the medicine for 7 days and you can live another 20 or 30 years. Har, an old man like me still has such a long life? I can't bear to part with it. I have to thank you very much again." After Xu Wenping finished the diagnosis and treatment, he wrote a prescription and turned to hand it to Nami. Seeing her frowning face, Xu Wenping handed it to the old dean and said, "Mr. Luo, I'll have to trouble you to get the medicine." No trouble. Dean Luo had been staring at the prescription for a long time. He snatched it away without waiting for his hand to reach out, and then began to read it as if he had found a treasure. Xu Wenping then turned around and left, walking into their house with Chenpi's parents. He glanced at Nami behind him and chuckled, "Be smarter in the future. I'll write you a notebook, you should read it more often. If my parents are not feeling well in the future, don't use that bad method." Nami nodded timidly, blushing and said, "Don't worry, master, Nami will definitely study hard and live up to your high expectations." Mr. Li at the back rested for a while, and when he stood up, he felt comfortable all over. He said with a smile, "You know what, this kid's stuff is really useful. I walk as light as a swallow." Dean Luo went downstairs to get the medicine. After returning home, Mr. Li stroked his chin and called his son. "Dad, how are you feeling?" Old Li raised his lips, smiled faintly, and said softly, "I'm sorry, kid, I was wrong about you today. To be honest, I really have to rely on you to take care of me in my old age." Dad, you said that again. The strong Li Jinkang answered at this moment, but he looked like he was happy and showing off after being praised. Mr. Li smiled and said, "Okay, I won't disturb you from your work. I heard from that kid just now that I'm in good health and can live another 20 to 30 years. You kid, you better pay attention. I can't afford to punish you for a few more years." Har. then I'll borrow his good words. Father, I hope you live a long life. Mr. Li didn't want to listen to his son's flattering words, so he hung up the phone immediately, threw the phone aside, and said to the bodyguard beside him, "Go and get me some information about the guy just now." "Yes, Mr. Li." Mr. Li seemed to be retired and unemployed at home, but he seemed to have a lot of energy in his hands. Within a few minutes, the bodyguard came over with a few thin pages of information. Mr. Li stood up and put on his reading glasses. He scanned the pages line by line, nodded slightly from time to time, and then frowned and said, "What happened a few days ago? Is the Dahao Group written on it? The Dahao Group in Jinhai City?" "Yes, Mr. Li. There is only one Dahao in Jinhai City." The bodyguard nodded slightly. The old man grinned and said, "Every generation has its own talented people. This kid is on the path of a great hero, right?" The bodyguard didn't dare to speak. Old Li said slowly, "Although my son has some awareness, the Li family still lacks the temperament of decisiveness. This Shu family, his father saved me, and now he has formed this relationship with me. Can I take advantage of the situation and do something to add icing on the cake?" The bodyguard didn't even dare to speak. "Old man, you once could decide the life and death of millions of people with just a single word. Who dares to respond to this?" Mr. Li stroked his chin, and seemed to get more and more excited the more he thought about it. Finally, he murmured to himself, "I, Mr. Li, have always been a helper in need, never the icing on the cake. Since the young man has such an extraordinary temperament, we can think of starting from somewhere else." Mr. Li talked for a long time and finally asked a question that the bodyguard dared to answer. "Is my little granddaughter Junlan coming back from studying abroad soon?" "Yes, Mr. Li. A girl should get married when she grows up. There's no point in her staying in our Li family. Let's find her a son-in-law and send her away." Mr. Li, who was lying down, looked contented.